not here.
Order. Good evening, everyone. Welcome. It is 6 o'clock, so we shall begin another scintillating instalment of the Scrutiny Panel. Thank you, members of the public, officers, councillors, everyone else, and folks watching at home. There are no practice alarms expected tonight. If an alarm does sound, please make your way downstairs in an orderly fashion via the main staircase or the side staircase and rendezvous in the car park of the town hall. The meeting, as I've mentioned, is being broadcast live as ever, and we'll be able to watch it in the future, and that's all grand. Discreet use of mobile phones, please, guys. No noises, otherwise you get fined, and we're likely to break at 7:30 for a caffeine fix. I'm Darius Laws. Tonight I'm identifying as the chairman of the panel, but I won't be offended if you accidentally call me a chair. It's really not a big deal. Let's have introductions, starting then on my left, please.
Councillor Simon Appleton, Highwoods Ward.
Councillor Vanessa Moffat, Mile End Ward.
Lee Scordis, Old Heath High for Rowhedge.
Councillor Jocelyn Law, Highwoods Ward.
Councillor Thomas Rowe, Rural North Ward.
Lucy Bredman, Strategic Director.
I got the chairman's ward. Sorry. Denny Bullets, Lexton and Braintree Ward. Braeswick.
Local government restructure already. Owen Howell, Democratic Services Officer.
Mel Rundle, Head of Sustainability.
Rosa Tanfield, Head of Neighbourhood Services.
Lindsay Barker, Deputy Chief Exec.
Matt Sterling, Head of Economic Growth.
David King, Leader of the Council.
Jane Goodenough, Transformation, Portfolio and PMO Manager.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for that clarification, Dennis, although we do like Braintree lots in this place, so I'm sure they won't be offended by the suggestion that you represent them. Okay, there are no substitutes tonight that I'm aware of. That's great. Item 3, urgent items, none that I'm aware of. I'm just looking at the clerk. Nope. Okay, good. Declarations of interest. Councillors, anyone? I see none. There are no minutes to approve on this occasion. There will be at the next meeting, but we've had a lot of meetings lately, and so that's fine. General, have your say. We have no pre-registered speakers. That's indicative that things are okay, so that's interesting. Item 7, decisions taken under special urgency provisions. There are none. Item 8, cabinet or portfolio holder decisions called in for review. Again, encouragingly, there are none. And item 9, items requested by members of the panel and other members. There are none, although I was tempted to ask that the events team consult with my wife around booking such fantastic bands as Smashing Pumpkins in Castle Park when I'm on holiday. But we'll let that one go. And you will note that we've reordered the agenda as originally was described for the benefit of accommodating everyone. And we're going to have item 11 first, not 10. So apologies for anyone that was expecting to get onto that one first of all. But we will do that. So it is item 11, the annual review of the Town Deal programme. And just to briefly remind folks at home, this was Colchester's bid for up to £25 million. We got something like 19 on a number of really exciting regeneration projects. And that monies have leveraged other monies, and we have projects that are ongoing. I probably will look to the leader to give us a little bit of a brief intro before we hear from our strategic economic development guru on all things that are happening. But leader, you're here. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I will just say that this is a great story for Colchester, and we're just at the right and best time. We've got some things delivered. We've got other maturing projects, some which go to the heart of what we should care about, which is the needs of those in the most deprived parts of the city, as well as regeneration and renewal in the city centre. We're going to have an exciting couple of years, whatever, going to Dennis a moment ago, whatever the forced on us or sought changes in structure, the legacy for this great city of ours is going to be enriched in the time that we have to control our own future. The only other thing I would add is that you are one extra layer of scrutiny. So we have the Town Deal Board set up by government, independent, mandated and required. And I want to say again, my thanks to all of those who can make that time available to serve their city. There's no reward in it. There's just an extra layer of responsibility. And these are people who often have many. We have the Town Deal and Levelling Up together taken through Team Colchester, which is a cross-party setting. And we have this cross-party scrutiny as well. That all of these things matter. And the team had to spare some time for me too, because as part of my portfolio, I do what I can to keep an eye, particularly on the challenge that I know will be offered, which is around what can we deliver for the money, where are we against the schedule, and what challenges we may have to adapt to, whether it's by changing scope or finding additional funding from partners or ourselves. So I hope you'll get a sense of a rich picture, and I think we're communicating this well, and I'll be really pleased to hear your views about that too. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. So we have some brief slides. I have printed them off for you because I'm conscious there's a lot of information on there, and sometimes being able to read those on the screens is quite difficult. But Matt and I are just going to run through. So I'm the Council's programme sponsor for the Town Deal programme. I also sponsor the Levelling Up Fund projects, and I lead the city centre work. So there's a huge amount going on across Colchester, and I guess partly tonight what we're going to prepare you for is what is going to be, as the leader said, a couple of years of quite intense delivery, which is very exciting, but it's also going to be a little bit disruptive. So we just need to be aware of that, because delivery means lots of kind of construction projects on the go. So if we go to the next slide, please, I'm going to let Matt just quickly talk about why we are doing the Town Deal in the first place.
Yeah, thank you, folks. And I'm Matt Sterling, Head of Economic Growth. The team that programme managed the fund within my area, so it's my day job to make sure that we stay on track. And I wanted to start just by thinking about reminding us why we're doing this work. So all of this, coupled with our Levelling Up programme, our £20 million Levelling Up programme, is aimed to strengthen Colchester's economy. So for the purposes of tonight, we're looking at the Town Deal, but we treat them both as one part for the same purpose, to make the city centre more vibrant, particularly in the case of Town Deal, to provide improved services and facilities in the area of highest need, which is the Heart of Greenstead project, to bring heritage assets back into use, so you'll be aware of the work on Jumbo and Holy Trinity Church. Those are two classic examples of bringing really much loved buildings back into use. A lot of the work, particularly the work around public realm, is about increasing footfall in the city centre to support the creation of new jobs and support existing jobs. And we're also trying at the same time to reduce antisocial behaviour and to encourage choice in methods of transport. So we'll take you through the individual projects in a moment, but bear in mind those are the overarching goals for all of them.
Can I just check, members, are we happy that we crash through the presentation and we take questions at the end? Is that okay? Thank you, great.
Fabulous, thank you. And we had the pleasure of sitting through a lot of this information at the operational board just a few weeks ago. So we have put some images in here for you because we're at the point in delivery where you can actually see some of the stuff that's going to happen. And it was a really invigorating meeting of all of those that have been involved in this, which has been quite a hard slog actually over the years. And when you're starting to get down to actually picking designs and colours because projects are about to be delivered, that's the point at which it becomes really exciting. So 24-25 in a nutshell. We've done a couple of slides on this because we just wanted to give you a sense of how much work there has been. So when we conceived of these projects before COVID, you know, they had kind of projected costs and projected expectations, and there's been a lot of work done because, as you can imagine, and every time I sit in front of you, we've talked about, you know, kind of the challenges around cost escalation and the challenges around the kind of the programme timescales. It is a huge team effort. So we have partners involved in this from the voluntary sector. We've got the Heritage Trust that are leading on Jumbo. We've got Essex County Council. So it is a huge team effort. And in the heart of Greensted, we have a very strong board which is anchored in the community. So a lot of community participation in that board. And if you remember, if any of you were here last time we came, we just talked about sometimes the projects, when you need to bring the community along with you, take longer in the early stages because they have to feel invested. They have to feel that the outcomes are there. So that project I'll talk about in a minute, but that collaboration across the whole programme is incredibly important to us. This year, we have been hugely focused around risk. Hugely focused around really strong governance and looking at where do we need to put our focus to mitigate the risks that allow us to deliver on the projects and the outcomes that we set out originally. So our time, the expertise that we have within the council and external expertise has been deployed into those projects where we know we've needed that extra push or we've had a higher level of risk. So we'll talk to you about that as well. But we've been challenged quite hard by the Town Deal Board around risk and governance, which is absolutely their job. So there has been a huge focus on that this year. On the next slide, please. As I said before, it's an exciting time. We will be in delivery. Lots of the levelling up projects are also on a similar time frame for delivery, so there's going to be a lot going on. And we're trying to now just build that momentum so that we get the confidence in the public. They're starting to see projects already on sites. We've got the digital forum already being built, but more and more projects coming forward, and you start to get that real confidence in what's coming. The biggest risk still remains the Heart of Greensted project. I will take you through that, and it still remains the biggest risk for the Town Deal Board at the moment. And I believe until we're in a contractual arrangement on the delivery of that project, and I can take you through that timeline, it will remain our biggest risk, but a huge amount of work has been done to bring forward design with that community that we now feel confident we can deliver. So you'll notice a bit of an approach to these, so we will canter through them, but you've got the information so you can have a look at it afterwards. And we're starting with the Heart of Greensted because it is the biggest project in the Town Deal programme overall. And it is to deliver a range of facilities all brought together in one community hub. So we will have access to most of the key public services. There'll be a new children's centre in what is currently the library building. There'll be an expanded and refocused use of the community centre. So we're putting a big extension on that to allow it to have a kind of sustainable income stream, but also to allow it to be like the heart of the community, more capacity within that. The council, through its housing service, bought St Edmund's House. There's some housing attached to that, but there's also a massive space in there where we will be putting a multi-agency hub. For any of you that know that area, there's a surgery on the bottom floor, big expansion of the surgery and the services that can be provided, being funded by the Integrated Care Board, the health side, and then a multi-agency hub on the floors above. So it's really a very exciting opportunity to put our first kind of multi-use hub in one of our communities. We've also, there's two other parts to the project. So pedal power, where we're really trying to encourage different modes of transport, free bike giveaway, lots of bike confidence programs done. It's an incredibly successful project and is already award-winning, which is brilliant. And then there's also, we call it livable neighbourhood, but it's about looking at how people move around that heart of Greensted and just trying to make it less daunting for people to cycle and to walk, and more permeable, if you like. So those are the kind of key features of that project. If we go on to the next one, So by revisiting all the designs on the Heart of Greenstead project, they've come up with this campus approach that I described before. So it keeps buildings in situ, which is better all round, but it also allows us to think about how do the different buildings and services that are run from them work together. So all of the work is quite complicated because there's lots of different partners involved. Perhaps it will be less complicated in the future after changes to government. But it's quite complicated because there's lots of different services being run by different organisations in different ways, but they're working together really well in the Heart of Greenstead board to sort all of that out. So the planning permission process and the procurement process are all outlined there. Aim to be contractually committed by mid-October this year and with completion in December 2026. We have regular communication with MHCLG and they're very comfortable with those timelines, as long as we are contractually committed on that project before the end of March 26. So those are the timelines that we are working to at the moment. And just quickly on Essex Pedal Power, 579 bikes already been given away and being actively used. And the data and the stats on that project are just amazing. It's a project that is also being run in tendering. So there's so much experience and goodwill around that project. It's absolutely fabulous. And then you've got a few examples of what's going on in the livable neighbourhood space, and there's a bit more kind of construction around how you manage the roadway. Couple of lovely photos just to show you community being involved, and we'll let you look at those later. But what we've done on every slide, if you can go on to the next one for me, is we've just given you an overview, which is now how we present into the Town Deal Board the timeline and the finances. So there's always a sense of where are we, where are the risks, what contingencies have we factored in, and where are potentially the financial risks. I won't go through it because they are in your report, but at least it gives you that sense that we are watching all of these very, very closely.
So if Heart of Greenstead is first theme and theme with probably the highest risk, second theme is our city centre theme. And it has 3 public realm projects and 2 heritage building projects as part of it, and they're on the screen. Can you go forward one slide, please? So the first, if you may have seen this happening as we speak, the first project is St Nicholas Square. That's on site at the moment. The plan is to bring what has always felt like a bit of a back area in the city centre to become a proper public square, to encourage more footfall and to encourage private sector investment in the businesses surrounding it. It's been a really challenging project, as David never fails to notice. It took an awful long time to get all the permissions and licences we needed because of the highway land that it covers. But we've been on site since February, I think, this year. We would have finished before Christmas had it not been for some archaeological finds that we weren't expecting. That necessitated extra archaeology, which pushed us into a Christmas break. But we're back on site and due to finish end of March, beginning of April. And the figures are there for you. Next slide, please, Owen. The second public realm scheme I wanted to talk to you about was the Holy Trinity Square. So same purpose, really, to bring something which actually at the moment is gated and locked, unavailable to the public, into public use. It's quite a light touch scheme, so we're not planning to bulldoze the square, but really just some light touch greening to introduce a kind of pocket park, effectively. We're trying to seek, we've got planning permission for this scheme, so the next stage is to go out to tender for the firm to do the works. We're actually timing it at the moment so that we follow the work on Holy Trinity Church, because they have got some external repair work they need doing. That will involve some heavy vehicles and some digging, and we don't want to do our lovely square and then have it dug up again. So I think we'll sequence it with that, and we'll likely be on site in September for that one, finishing by the end of January 26. Next slide, please. And then the last public realm scheme is on what you will know as the Essex County Hospital, but we're now calling Lexton Gardens, which is a housing scheme that went to, obviously, planning committee some time ago. The town deal money for that scheme is funding accessible, attractive public realm. So not just for use by the residents of the development, but truly public realm. We're expecting that the work on the site is well underway, but we're expecting work on the public realm to start in September and complete by March next year. Next slide, please. It's two really exciting projects now. So Holy Trinity Church, who knew the oldest building in Colchester? Everyone assumes it's the castle, but actually we have a Saxon tower here, which is the oldest extant building. It sat empty for a long time. It was deconsecrated decades ago, but it sat empty for quite some time and is in not the best condition, really. So the town deal money is being used to do repairs, to get it back up into a good state, and then to trigger a bid to the Heritage Lottery Fund to renovate the building for modern use. We're really pleased that we've got St Helena Hospice on board as the operating partner for the building. They will operate it for some of their activities, which I think we all understand the value of, but also as a community hub and a shared space. And we will be putting the lottery bid in August, right, with everything crossed. Next slide, please. And then the other heritage building, and you may have heard of this in the news quite recently because we've had some very good news, is Jumbo. So this one being managed by an independent heritage trust on our behalf, but a chunk of town deal money to do repairs on the building that are much needed, but again to trigger a bid to the Heritage Lottery Fund, and that bid got bigger and bigger as it was being written. It ended up at 8 million, but we heard in the last month that it was successful. So that's 8 million of National Heritage Lottery Fund money coming to Colchester, which will allow that building to come back into use as a visitor attraction. The necessary planning permission was given, I think, last week or the week before, after we had resolved the knotty issue of rehoming the peregrine falcons, for which there is now a mitigation plan. And you can see the timelines. The on-site work starts in October this year. So, I mean, at last, a building that has sat there begging for some proper use, coming back into use. Next slide, please. The third theme is about transformed youth facilities, and this is all about improving the life opportunities of young people by enhancing youth facilities. It involved 3 streams of work, so improving Stanway and Highways centres, which was quite light touch work, and then a really major renovation of the main centre on West Stockwell Street, the townhouse. The work at Highwoods and Stanway is complete. The work at the townhouse got delayed because they had to re-tender for a construction firm, but actually they've got someone on board now they're really happy with, and the designs are finalised. And you can see on the slide there, that's, I think, the entrance lobby. And these designs have been done really closely with the young people who are users of the centre. So they're much more exciting than perhaps they might be had some of us tried to come up with. Some of us in my team would try to come up with them. Next slide, please. We've got just a couple of images of what they're expecting to do in the building, which you can see that young people have been part of the design by looking at them. Okay, next slide, Owen. A few more images of the kitchen area and some breakout space. Next slide, please. And then I'll move on to the fourth theme, which is, we call it physical connectivity. It is, in effect, a walking and cycling route that links the city centre to the east of Colchester towards the university and Greenstead. It's about 3 kilometres of new route, or enhanced route, and it's all about providing choice of how people travel. So we know that plenty of people will need to continue driving, but if just a small number of people start walking and cycling, it makes a big dent in congestion. The early work on that scheme on Colne Causeway was done last year and is complete. The next phase is to do the walking and cycling route down East Hill, and it's a protected route. It is properly separated route. It has been complex, shall we say. It's being managed by Essex County Council, but it's encountered some challenges both in terms of cost and road safety issues. The scheme has been redesigned, which I think has brought it into the budget envelope. It's just finishing its journey through the road safety audit now, or the re-audit. So you can see on the screen there that we're expecting to be on site in the summer of this year. And then we have some lovely pictures for you on the next slide of temporary traffic measures and cones, which I can assure you is work happening at Colne Causeway, but it doesn't really do it justice. Next slide, please. So from plastic cones to the digital businesses, the fifth strand is digital connectivity. So if the physical connectivity was about walking and cycling, this is all about enabling digital skills, digital businesses. And there are 3 projects as part of this. There's a new IT training suite, effectively, called the Digital Skills Hub at the Wilson Marriage Centre. There's the building you can see on the screen there, which is the Digital Forum, which will be a shared workspace for small tech businesses. And then there's our 5G pilot project. Next slide, please. So I'll give you a really quick summary of where they're at. Digital Skills Hub completed, so that was the first project to go, and that's done and dusted. That was actually ready to be opened in September 23, and we've had a year now of use and courses, and there's some stats on the presentation there of the use. We've had 25 people gain accreditations in the first tranche using that facility. The Digital Forum, I suppose there's a couple of bits of news. It's being built as we speak. If you've been down Queen Street recently, you'll have seen it. It's on the site of the old bus depot. The design was actually intended to mimic a theatre building that had been on that site before the bus depot. I'm really pleased that we've got Colby on board to manage the building for us, because they've got a track record in running shared business space. They've got 2 centres in Colchester. And they're very much in the mobilisation phase at the moment. So they're marketing the building, they're pursuing links and getting a good deal of interest in the building as well. I think the building itself due to finish build in about June this year. So we're looking at a summer launch. And then the 5G project, this is to pilot 5G technology in the city centre. It has 2 real big benefits. One, it's intended to provide a test case to encourage private investment. But it's also, one of the pilots will be in the museum service. So we'll actually provide a tangible new experience for the visitor centre at the museum. They're putting in the infrastructure as we speak, and then in the next phase is to design the virtual reality experience at the museum. But I think the plan is that it would enable you to walk around the castle on the outside and see the building through history and to see how it evolved, how it was built. Next slide, please. Got some beautiful pictures for you there. So the top left is the new Digital Forum building, and then the bottom left is some detail about look and feel of the building. So the sort of feel that Colby are going for. Next slide, please. And then these aren't actually the Digital Forum, these are other spaces, but these are included because this is what Colby are aspiring to in the building. So it's really intended to attract small young tech businesses, and this is, they're fairly confident this is the look that would work. And then next slide, please. And then this map, I just wanted to show you it because this relates to the 5G scheme, but when the base stations are put in place, this shows you the coverage we'll have of 5G at the city centre. First town with this sort of system, I understand. It's really pioneering stuff. And of course it captures the castle, it captures the Digital Forum, so it provides really super high speeds for new facilities there. But actually enables the Amphora, the digital fibre business, to connect customers much quicker and much more cheaply. Next slide, please. Next slide again, sorry. So I won't dwell on this one, but this slide just shows you some of the milestones that are rolling out in 25. So Lindsay mentioned, I think once or twice, that it's a year of delivery, and you can start to see a kind of a growing snowball of projects that come to fruition in the next 12 months. Next slide, please. Actually, can you go forward another one as well? Lindsay said that the focus this year has been on key risks, and it absolutely has. I think Lindsay's talked about what those risks are, so I won't dwell a lot on this project, this slide. But just to say, the two things that are flashing red lights at my desk most days are about time and money. So the cost of projects and the time of projects. We are on track to deliver all of these projects by the end of the life of the project, or to be contractually committed. We're on track to cover the costs of the project, but that is something that needs work on a weekly, daily, if not weekly basis. And I'll hand over to you, Lindsay.
Thank you. And Dennis, I've got you ringing loudly in our ear because you always ask us about outcomes and benefits. And what we've tried to include in the projects where they have been delivered is just some sense of where we're already starting to deliver against those. So you've got the pedal power details, for example. You've got, it's lovely to see the Digital Skills Hub actually turning out accreditations for people already in their first year. So we've put some of those in because, of course, although these are infrastructure projects, they're about people, you know, and they're about outcomes for people in our communities. So we just reminded you, because I absolutely know when we come back next year and then when we do an evaluation of this, this is what you'll want to know. Have we achieved? So these are the outcomes on the next slide, please, that we said when we signed up for the Town Deal programme that we would deliver on. So we're already delivering against some of these, but these are the ones that we have in our line of sight all the time to make sure as we go through this that the outcomes are for people. You know, about making sure they get access to employment, they get access to skills, simple things like in the townhouse, they get access to cooking skills, you know, life skills that they need, you know, in those facilities. So those are the outcomes that we continue to measure ourselves against. And as we continue to do these presentations, you'll see more and more of these being achieved and met. So thank you, Owen. Just to summarise, and we have regular conversations with MHCLG, as you would expect. They are the ones who oversee all of our contractual commitments with them. I think if they were here and they say it regularly to the Town Deal Board, they have a huge confidence in Colchester and in our ability to deliver on the projects. They know it's been challenging across the country, but they certainly have authorities they're working with who are not going to meet their Town Deal commitments, and we were absolutely determined in Colchester that was not going to happen. We have completed a number of projects, and it's lovely every time I come because you can tick a few more off. We've delivered them. But as I said earlier, lots will be on delivery this year. So we have been very careful to try and draw in as much funding as we can to mitigate any cost to us. So alongside this, there's already a huge amount of money coming in, National Heritage Lottery Fund, and on the Holy Trinity, we're already through the early gateways on that. So assuming we can keep National Heritage Lottery on board, then, you know, we should be in line for the Holy Trinity Church as well. As said about the ICB funding, we're also in the middle of a Safer Streets funding to be able to complete the walking and cycling route, the middle phase across the moors. It's been a challenging year, we've said that, but actually the momentum now is there and it feels really exciting, and hopefully you can start to go on your tours around these projects and see some real life impact in the city centre.
Okay, thank you very much for that presentation. Members, questions please. I see Councillor Scordis.
Thank you, Chair. I've got quite a few questions, but hopefully they're short ones for short answers. I mean, I know that some of these projects we were talking about many years ago, and I think St Nicholas Square we were hoping would have been completed about 3 years ago. It might have been longer. I'm just wondering, how confident are we on these deadlines? I understand Jumbo obviously might be a bit more complicated because that's a bigger project, but on most of these deadlines, how confident are we? On Lexton Gardens, I understood it was Essex Housing who took this site, so why are we paying for things here unless is it the land that we own around the periphery to improve that area? Because I know some of the landscaping might be owned by CCC. Curbless streets, it'd be interesting to know why that was too much money, because surely we factored that in, but I'm guessing maybe inflation played a part. And in Holy Trinity Church, I mean, you guys said it's the oldest building in Colchester, so I'd be interested to know, why are we giving this to a charity to run because again, we don't always have the best track record with our heritage, and it does seem like, I've said it before, this would be a good spot for the Tourist Information Centre, the oldest building, where people could look around for free. So why are we giving it to a charity, and how long is the lease for St Helena, or if St Helena dropped out, whoever would take that on?
Okay, we'll have Councillor Scordis's contribution and questions, but I just want to make a point that some of what we're doing tonight can't be so retrospective about decisions that have been made, because we could all have a long debate about the overall use of the monies. I might make a case for why wasn't the Roman circus included, other bits and bobs, but I don't really think that would be that helpful. But I will let Councillor Scordis's questions prevail, if you don't mind, but feel free.
I think we'll probably do a double act, if that's okay. So I think the question about deadlines is a really good one. It is definitely something that we get challenged on quite regularly when we do our briefings with the portfolio holder, which happens to be the leader. So I'll let David give his own view on it too. I would say at this point in time, I'm probably about, well, I'm certainly confident we will meet contractual commitment requirements by March 26. Being able to exactly stick on the deadlines we've given here, I'd probably say I'm about 70% at the moment, Councillor Scordis, but there's a lot of work to do. So I'm just going to be honest with you, that's where I am at the moment on the big projects that aren't in contract, so Heart of Greenstone particularly. On Lexton Grange, so that was very much about the viability of that scheme. It was also about, it's a key site that provides public open space in an area that we wanted to kind of make it open to the wider community and not just for the residents of that site. So it was very much a viability of that scheme discussion with Essex Housing. So that's why it came in as a request. Not all the projects had to be in our ownership. Obviously, we've talked about plenty of other partners at the table on this. So it was a viability issue that brought that contribution forward to do the public realm on that site. I'll let you talk about Kerbless.
And Holy Trinity as well. And I'm letting Councillor Scordis's questions prevail in the knowledge that Councillor Scordis wasn't on scrutiny previously, where lots of this has been had. So that's why I'm being fair to Councillor Scordis.
Why is Kerbless too expensive? This is a very, very good question. Ultimately, it was a highway scheme, so it would have been to level the surface along the entire and resurface the entire road. We priced the scheme to the best of our ability when we put the bid in. When we came to quantity survey it and get it detailed costing, it was just a great way beyond the budget. We priced it two different ways to see if we could get it within budget. So first of all, we pared down the amount of the road we would cover. We tried doing it either through highways themselves, so they would be both the permission giver and the deliverer, and we quantity surveyed it independently to see if it could be cheaper if we did it piecemeal. It was way over budget on all measures. I have to say the business reaction to Kerbless was mixed. There were some businesses that really were looking forward to it. There were some that were quite anti because of the perceived disruption that the scheme would bring. So yeah, it fell foul of cost. In terms of Holy Trinity Church, I think the plan in the town investment plan was always that a third-party specialist agency would run the building. And I think, generally as a council, we look to others to where someone else can bring their specialism to bear and their community links. It has a real advantage. I think we're incredibly lucky to have got the hospice because they're seriously committed to the heritage of the building, but they'll bring they're already bringing imagination and flair and popular appeal. In terms of the duration of their lease, we haven't agreed it yet. It will be longish, but not ridiculous. We will remain owners of the building, and there'll be break clauses in the contract to make sure what we need doing in the building is being done.
I'd probably just add to that, it is a requirement of Heritage Lottery funding that you work with a partner as well to run those buildings, and they were watching very closely who we brought on board and are very happy with the outcome of the recent round. So it is one of those requirements when you go for Heritage Lottery funding.
Thank you. Leader.
I'd just pick up on the challenge given to me by Lindsay. an opportunity actually to repeat the conversation we have every couple of months. In terms of the ability to be delivered, well, you're absolutely right. It's Nicholas Square, and Lindsay, you've never heard this before from me. It is the world's slowest accelerated scheme. But there were some exceptional circumstances, and I think we've done, if we're honest about it, some learning about how the City Council and highways have to get a better sense of scope and challenge early. So there's, can't go back over that, doesn't help us now. At this stage, I'm kind of with Lindsay that, and I'll go one step further, it is just a logic. Until you're in contract, even then you'll be wise to have a caution about when the contract will be delivered. Until then, you're relying upon estimate, best judgment, and we do the things we should in that phase of trying to understand what will happen. So quantity surveyors are brought in, market testing, people who are leaders in their field, we go to them and try to get them to do some parallel scoping. I think it's a reasoned position that keeps the pressure on us and the pressure on those who are here to help us deliver. Can't guarantee we won't have some more slippage. Heart of Greenstead is complex with many partners, and I take confidence from the progress made, but there's lots of scope in those combinations yet for something to go a little awry. So that's the one for me to watch. But in the round, I'm now content, and I'll be frank, more than I have been at any point, that with these multiple layers that we have to manage, the team, the people to my left and those working with them, and to my right, are all over this, and that's your best assurance. It's certainly mine. Thank you.
Okay, I've got Councillor Moffat, I've got Councillor Law, and then Councillor Appleton, and then we'll have more.
Thank you, Chairman. It's just a quick one around contingency. If I'm reading this right, it sounds like contingency is built into all of these, sorry, I should say first, fabulous portfolio of projects, and amazing to see them delivered as well. But yeah, around the contingency, it looks like you're well within the contingency that's planned for each of the projects, and if you look at it overall, it sounds like that's all in hand. Is that correct?
At the moment, that is the case, but it comes to the point raised earlier by Councillor Scordis, because we have decommissioned a couple of projects. So some of the money has had to be moved around. MHCLG gave a tolerance. They recognised across the country that because of cost inflation, that councils could move some money around within the schemes within a tolerance, and that is what we have done. So any funding that was previously designated for the curbless has been reallocated. So we do get contingency said to us an awful lot as well. So we've been very careful on that. But as I say, until we're in contractual commitment on the Heart of Greenstead, it still remains a risk.
Okay, Councillor Law.
Thanks very much. Yeah, echo what Vanessa said. You know, really interesting presentation, and you know, I know it's something that residents are often asking about what's being done in the city centre. So it's really good to have this overview today. So I've just got sort of a few questions really around sort of possible risks. One was around the delivery. There's a lot of delivery of projects in the next year or so. And I just wondered about sort of mitigating issues of sort of infrastructure, any building works or developments, and how that will be managed so that it won't impact detrimentally, you know, people accessing or businesses in the city centre. Secondly, you know, really great to see St Helena Hospice being part of the Holy Trinity and the Hub project. You know, obviously they've got a site in my ward, and I know the team there are fantastic, and they've got a really great holistic approach to working communities. Just wondering if you can say whether appointing a new partner, whether that has led to a drag in the project and a delay, and if there were any implications on that. And then my last question, I'm not quite sure how much you're involved, but in terms of cross-agency working, I was just wondering when you were saying about the importance of bringing people into the city centre and footfall and different means of transport, and you know, it's really good to see active transport there, but I just wondered whether you're working with sort of like the police and the wardens and council staff, just because we have had some issues around antisocial behaviour around buses and bus stops that I know residents have raised with me, and whether, you know, we want people to come into the city centre and feel safe, and how you're able to work and mitigate against those risks. Thanks.
Great questions, thank you. Just to, we took the slide out because there's plenty of slides on there, but we do have on our website a city centre interactive map as well. So if you do get questions, you know, from communities, they can click on any part of that map and see what's going on, and it'll always have the latest information on there. So do direct people to that, because it's got the levelling up projects, it's got all sorts of stuff on there in terms of communications. We very early on in the city centre work realised that coordinating all the projects was going to be a massive challenge, and trying to make sure that there was a mitigation of the impact on businesses and on residents. So one of the first things that Team Colchester did, which is the leader of Essex County and the portfolio holder there, and the leader here, and the leader of the Conservative group and the leader of the Labour group all sit on Team Colchester. One of the first things they did was to put a pot together. So we put half the money in each into a fighting fund, and we recruited a coordination role. So that was one of the first things we did. So we have Dan, you might have met Dan. He oversees the coordination. He has very complicated timelines for everything. He also knows everything that's coming in the wider city centre. So any kind of Essex County highways projects that are outside of our knowledge, he's got access to all of their planning and mapping as well, so that we're always able to kind of know what's coming, and then he works with the bid to make sure that the businesses are also well informed. So that coordination role, I think, has been incredibly invaluable, because we've only shown you a tiny portion, and I'd love to show you the whole of the city centre stuff, and we will do when we do a full presentation, but it definitely needs coordinating. So that has been a real success of the project.
Sorry, can you repeat your question about the hospice?
Has it delayed?
Oh, has it delayed? Sorry, yes. Yeah. Yes, it has definitely delayed the project. So we had one organisation on board from the beginning to be the operating partner. They fell by the wayside, I think earlier in 2024. We sought to mitigate it as far as possible, but I think the truth is it built in a few extra months because we had to do a tender process. I think we're all very comfortable now, and crucially the funder is comfortable with the choice, and that is really important. In terms of your point about antisocial behaviour and crime, on each of the schemes, particularly the public realm schemes, we involve the police and particularly their crime, designing out crime officer, to ensure that the scheme helps rather than hinders, if you see what I mean. So, for example, with Holy Trinity Square, they gave us some really good advice about lighting and cameras that make it a safer space, and we try and replicate that on all of our schemes.
Very good. Councillor Appleton.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, as others have said, lots of exciting projects, great for the city and good progress as well. I mean, I visited the Highwoods Youth Centre a couple of times since that work was completed, and that really is a great facility now. We're looking to get that used even more than it is already, so thank you there. St Nicholas Square, you've mentioned reasons for the delay and the cost overrun within contingencies, so that's good. The Curbless Street, I walk, which one is it? Short Wire Street, that's it. I walk up there probably 3 or 4 times a week. And one of the benefits that I saw there was that the quality of the pavements up there is pretty poor and quite dangerous in places. So I'm hoping that that can still be looked at, and I'm sure it will be, and probably out of scope for this conversation, but just worth a mention. But otherwise, yeah, very positive. Thank you.
Could I just pick up the last pint? Last pint, that'd be nice, wouldn't it? I'll buy you one each. We'll close early, Chair. Your last point about the state of city centre. So I hope colleagues have seen in some parts of the city centre that loose stones and poor quality is being addressed, and some parts I think are looking fantastic, particularly where we're working to connect old with new, for example, around St Nicholas Square. And part of the driver for that was an agreement with County Council that we together would put in effect a fighting fund, £250,000 between us, half of it from the county, but a contribution from the city centre and city council rather. We're hoping to do the same again. So we're in early stages of talking to the County Council about where those areas most in need are in terms of condition improvement. One for me would be away from the exact heart of the city centre towards an important part of it, which is North Station Road, the area around the bridge and the bridge itself. So we are absolutely up for working together. We've got the agreement in principle, we have to translate it again, the same challenge, through the limited capabilities we all have, people to task, to contract, to work. But no, we will be doing some more in the coming year. We'll see some more improvement. That feel for the city centre, only one way we must take it, and that's up. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. Okay, I've got Councillor Rowe and then Councillor Willits, and I see no one else.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, sort of echo what everyone says. I won't repeat anything else, but yeah, it all looks fantastic and lovely. I just have some questions on the original dates. So I know that we have the dates that we project and that we're looking at in the future, but what were the original dates and how much have they slipped by originally? I think from sort of a learning lessons perspective, it would be good to just see what those dates are, even if we just sort of circulate them amongst the councillors and internally. I understand that these things are difficult to do, but effectively, what lessons could we take from the slippage of those originals so that we could make sure that those bids are more effective in the future? And is that work being done, or is that work projected to be done after the bids? How do we go about learning lessons from this whole process? Thank you.
I mean, I think the question about original dates is really important. The town deal timeline for the programme was always to 2026. So it was a manageable timeline. So they gave us 5 years. They gave us 2 years on levelling up. They gave us 5 years on the town deal. And we got some funding towards capacity. So we've been able to put a project manager into the town deal programme, which has been invaluable. So, so it actually got kind of the right investment and the right start. The original dates varies project by project. So the Digital Skills Hub got delivered on time, whereas Pedal Power, whereas others have definitely slipped. So St Nick's was supposed to be an accelerated project. It definitely was not accelerated. So, they do really vary. Heart of Greensted, we always predicted would be at the back of the programme because we wanted to work with the community, and setting up that whole community infrastructure and making sure that the community could guide the development probably took us about 18 months, I would say, because you've got to get from people coming on board all the way through to being able to sign off designs for schemes, and it takes a long time when you're working with communities. So we always knew that the Heart of Greensted was going to be at the back end of the programme. But you're right, it'd be good to just have a little bit of a look back at what did we say we were going to deliver and by when. The real focus of the team, though, has been to make sure we get everything delivered by 2026. I'll let Matt do the lessons because we do really capture those, and we have been learning them already for the Loft project. So
yeah, we have a very long list of lessons learned, actually. I mean, to some extent, the original timelines are based on speculation. So when you put the bid in, you have to speculate how long these things will take you, and you use your best endeavours. You apply some professional thought to it, but they are estimates in effect. And Lindsay's right that we've been very, very focused on the ultimate end timetable. I think we've tried to be quite pragmatic. So sometimes schemes are time has run away with us and it's not been of our making. So one of the reasons we had to walk away from Kerbless was because not only was it too expensive, but we could see that if we applied the St Nicholas Square learning to that, which is the experience of seeking all the permissions you need from highways, that we'd be unlikely to be able to fundraise and deliver the scheme within the timescale. I think I won't go through the whole list now, but we've learned about optimism bias. David often mentions this to me. I think we sort of want a bit of it. We want to be bold and optimistic when we put the bids in, but we don't want to have too much optimism bias in terms of our planning. I think cost escalation was no one foresaw the invasion of Ukraine. Well, someone probably did, but we didn't foresee the invasion of Ukraine. The way that the cost inflation exploded at post-pandemic, that built in a lot of delay because we had to go back and redesign schemes. And then I just think it's I think one of the real learning curves is around how complex each of these individual projects are. You know, St Nicholas Square, in essence, it's a repaving of some public realm, but it is incredibly complex around archaeology and heritage and utilities and highways permission. So absolutely no excuses. We're full of, you know, we're very open-minded and open-eared to the learning, but yeah, really trying to capture it all.
Councillor Rowe, for one more comeback, you can have it.
Yeah, no, I just want to say, no, I appreciate it. Thank you very much. It's not a criticism from my perspective. It's simply just that if we're going to scrutinise it properly, I think it would be good for us to see the lessons learned so that we know that it's been achieved. And I think it should be circulated at least amongst these, if not amongst wider councillors, so that we know that I'm sure you guys are all on top of it, but it would just be good from you know, we wouldn't be doing our job properly if we didn't look at it and say, okay, fine, let's see what the lessons learned are, let's see how we can get better. And I understand they're ludicrously complex, these things. You know, there's all sorts of things that nobody would ever think of. And as you said, you know, there's the pandemic, the Ukraine war, there's loads of outside influences that we have literally no control over. So it's not a criticism, it's simply just I think that we should do that as just good practice. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Willits has some questions, and I must apologise, I made a mistake of consuming too much Dr Pepper before coming into the room. So Councillor Willits has got his questions, and I'm going to be as quick as I can to get back to the answers.
Oh, thank you, Chairman. Yes.
You're in the chair now.
Oh, I'm in the show. It's locked.
Unlimited in Five Guys.
As Lindsay mentioned earlier on, one of the things which has always attracted me about this project, not is it's being done extremely well and professionally, and we're hearing all the time what it is we're doing, and sometimes we lose track of why are we doing it. And to me, it's important to take the whys along with the whats. And I mean, the heart of this project, we're putting £6 million into Greenstead. Hopefully that will bring in other investments and so on. The reason why we're focusing this project on that particular area is the problem of the multiple deprivation in that area. Although we have pockets of deprivation all over the city, that is clearly the largest and the most problematic. And I've been hoping that as we see all this huge expertise in project management and forecasting what the future will have, I was hoping at some stage we're going to have an estimate of the time impact that the Heart of Grinstead project will have. So, you know, can we look forward 5 years from the completion date and say, because we've delivered this project, we will see a gradual reduction in the various component indices of multiple deprivation as they come down as a result of what we're delivering. Because to my mind, if we can't see that, there's little point in ploughing a huge sum of money into an area to solve a particular problem. And the one thing which is missing out of the project planning is the following 5 years and just how we expect to see the economic situation of Grinstead improve and multiple deprivations come down. So do you have any firm views? I know the leader has neatly dodged this question on many occasions, and I think he's left the room, but I just wondered whether as part of the project planning process, you were able to use this marvellous crystal ball that you used to bring all your projects in on time to look just a bit further ahead. That's my first question.
Well, I think it's actually a really important question, because you're quite right. It is an area with multiple challenges. My view on the impact of the Heart of Grinstead project is that, yes, it will have a very significant impact, and the benefits we've talked about, you know, were the ones that we outlined in the Town Deal programme to get the money, but actually what's happening in the health space particularly is a level of place planning around Greensted that is going way beyond what we put in our town deal programme. So they're starting to really look at how do you kind of really focus all of that multi-agency support into a community to tackle issues that have been there for years and years and years. Now, they will absolutely, because it's how health works, be putting in all the metrics, all the evaluation. So as part of the place plans that will come forward over the next year, and Rory Doyle is the person to talk about these, not me. He's employed by Health and by the council. So it's quite hard to know, putting the buildings in, what will that deliver? But what it will deliver is that real joined up service delivery that hopefully will start to have a real impact on people's lives. What we can get just from, for example, pedal power, is an understanding of how giving somebody a bicycle has allowed people to access employment. So we can get those things, and they'll be very individual kind of pieces of information, but they start to give you an insight, because for that person, that's transformational. But the bigger picture stuff will be measured through that evaluation process that the health colleagues are putting in. Because you're absolutely right, you know, it's what is that longer term impact that is really crucial in that community. We won't be able to track that just through this work. We will be tracking, did we achieve the outcomes we set out to by putting these buildings in, but that won't give you the whole picture for that particular one. But I'm very excited about the health work. I think it's time we really evaluated impact in that community.
I mean, if we move towards a health and wellbeing board, it may well be that it's their business, not Scrutiny Panel business. But should we be looking to put markers down in the work programme for next civic year to start prompting that we want information as the project draws to a conclusion? We then need to be ramping up. And I think there was a suggestion in the past that perhaps a little bit of the project money might be thrown in the direction of Essex University for a sort of several-year contract for them to report back to either the Scrutiny Panel or the Health and Wellbeing Board over the next 3 years on what the practical effect is on a year-by-year basis.
Yeah, I mean, again, such a good question. Interestingly, so we're meeting with the university next week on one of our regular partnership meetings, and we are already talking to them about 2 pieces of evaluation, specifically on one of them is specifically on Greensted, that they are going to do for us. So they generally, when they put research projects together, they bid as well for funding to come in. So you can put some funding in and then they bid. So it has a kind of status when it's finished and it's published. So we're absolutely in the same space on that. I think they have a lot of skill and expertise, and they're more and more interested because of the civic university agreement we now have with them on doing their research projects in their area. So that's fantastic for us. We benefit as well. So we can absolutely start to bring through, you know, the outcomes of those as we see them. You're right about the Health and Wellbeing Board, though. It might be that some of the outcomes feed into there. We'll know a lot more once that gets set up, but we'll work that out in terms of where it should be programmed, because I think you're right. Those outcomes need to be tracked.
My second question, Chairman, we've been very precise in understanding how the government money is being used on these projects to ensure that projects come in on time, on cost, and will give the full benefit. I have not seen in the papers any estimate of what resource has been put in at a management level. I mean, we're aware that, there was reference earlier on that a special team had been put together to ensure that there was a proper coordination role. We're aware that the experts sitting around the table are spending a considerable proportion of their time managing these projects and ensuring that everything stays on track. Problematically, looking outside this room, we've got the Town Deal Board, and we've no idea how many thousands of hours they've to this project. We've got the team Colchester who are putting time and effort into managing. So there seems to be an enormous management overhead, which we're not actually seeing. It isn't costed, it isn't being reported to the scrutiny panel. I guess part of it will be drawn against the actual project costs. But I would find it reassuring to know just what is the level of activity that we're putting in. And I guess that has to be a very, very rough estimate, given that a lot of the time and effort, it cannot be costed because it's being given voluntarily. But a lot of the effort is coming from your teams, your people, who are putting in all the effort to make sure that these projects are delivered. And it would just be interesting for the scrutiny panel to know the level of resource which is being put in to make sure that these projects are delivered properly and we get the community benefits from them.
Yeah, I mean, again, at the highest, I'll let Matt talk about the team, because we did get some funding for some specific posts around the town deal. When it's project capacity, it can get costed to the project, you're absolutely right. But the management overhead, I spend probably about a fifth, I'd say, of my time on all things city centre. So that includes the wider city centre work that we do through Levelling Up and the broader city centre programme includes Town Deal. So it is quite significant, but of course it's the largest kind of economic driver, so it's a political priority for the council. So that's why. But I'm sure you know that you're absolutely right. There's a lot of time and effort goes in. Senior politicians. We only have a Town Deal board every quarter, and obviously, as David said, none of the attendees of the Town Deal board get paid. They all do it voluntarily, so they're giving up their time. But it is a voluntary role on those. But it is it's a significant commitment. We have never costed it at the management level. But do you want to talk about the team level, Matt?
We've never costed it at the management level, but your words, enormous management resource, did bring a slight smile to my face, because I haven't spotted them. Actually, we always try to, we've really tried to be as lean as possible with this. So the Town Deal came with money to fund 2 specific posts. So there's a programme manager post, which is Simon Thorpe. He is the instiller of governance discipline, is how I think of him. He manages the programmes, and it funded an engagement specialist as well, a part-time engagement specialist. The Levelling Up programme, so a mirror programme, another 20 million, came with no such resource. So we did it all within the same resource, effectively. So, you know, we were geared up to deliver Town Deal initially, and then with the same people, the same amount of time, the same enormous management resource, we're now delivering both schemes. So it would be interesting to see the figure, but I think I'm pretty confident we've sought to be as lean as we possibly can.
Chair, I think it would be useful if we could have a sort of a briefing note, and I recognise this is not a subject where we want thousands of people hours spent working out how other thousands of people hours have been used, but just a sort of a rough and ready note to give us a feel for the scale of the management overhead, which we already accept is going to be very advantageous when you look at the size of the project that is being managed. But nevertheless, I think it's something that we should know if someone can put their thinking hat on and just come up with something rough and ready.
We're happy to do something rough and ready. There isn't a lot of time to do anything more than that.
Okay. Right, colleagues, I think probably we've got to the end of that item on the Town Deal. So thank you very much for your contributions. You're more than welcome to stay as ever, or if you've got other things to do, then entirely.
Briefing notes, recommendation. Resolution, sorry.
The resolution is to note the briefing that we've had, and we're all content with it.
And to get the briefing note.
And the briefing note, which was the specific request from Councillor Willits around a rough and ready.
We could have a show of hands. So I've been asked to get a show of hands.
Formally, yes.
Yeah, formally, yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, take that.
Yeah, it's fine.
Thank you.
Senior colleague asked that.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Right, moving on then to an item which Councillor Goss is going to give us a very brief introduction on, I believe, and then hand over probably to your officers for the detail and the scrutiny. But Councillor Goss, what are you here for tonight, sir? Councillor Goss, sorry, we're just checking your microphone is definitely working.
Oh no, it's working now, hopefully.
Okay.
Imagine me muted. Right, so I'll cover off what the paper is saying. You should have, of course, read it as part of your preparation for tonight. But in essence, this is bringing back something that we looked at in 2021, where we brought to scrutiny, what do we do with the future of grounds maintenance? Do we continue it in-house? Or sorry, do we bring it in-house, or do we continue with the current outsourcing with ID Verdi? We were, of course, tied into contractual obligations at the time, and the scrutiny panel recommended that we actually extend the contract by a further period, which we did at the same price prior to 11% inflation, etc., etc. So actually was actually very good value for the taxpayer in that respect. We are at that point where we cannot renew the contract again. There is only so many times you can do that. It runs out in October 2026. So going back to a number of objectives. Number one, what is the future? So the paper is basically stating that we want to continue to look at bringing it in-house, and there is a discovery phase of 8 months outlined in the paper based on the work by APSI. The second objective, of course, is to try and save £1 million overall by bringing together the different services, which is described in the paper. And there is also a third point, I think, to take into account. It's not an objective, but we have to be mindful of government reorganisation in local councils and the impact that could have on projects like this. The bottom line contractually is we have to do something before October 2026 because that's the deadline. We cannot renew the contract. Another option could be to re-tender it, but the prices will go up by at least 20%, at least, because the market's moved. So we're locked into an old contract at old prices, which actually benefits the council, and the taxpayer doesn't necessarily benefit ID Verdi, to be perfectly honest, because it's an old legacy contract. So that's what we want to do. That's where we need to try and get to, bearing in mind that we could be partnered with Tendering and Braintree, possibly. They actually do their grounds maintenance in-house. So again, thinking more strategically long-term, there could be a benefit to follow the model that they have as well, although Tendering outsources its waste collections as an example. So that's basically what the paper is saying. Save £1 million, bring it back in-house. That decision is not final. We need to do the discovery phase. We'll need to look at what's going on with government reorganisation of local councils and all of the options that will go to Cabinet are all set out in the paper. You can obviously go through them, but that's a synopsis. That's basically what we're here to talk about. Happy for Mel or Rosa to cover any further detail, but if not, let's go straight to questions and cut through the chase.
I like this decisiveness. Would you like to add, or would you want us to crack on?
So we've got 9 slides. If you're happy for us to just talk it through, it just goes through the report quite succinctly, as Councillor Goss has already gone through, but if that's helpful. Yeah? Okay, so what we want to do tonight is present you with a Cabinet report for your own scrutiny, and we do recognise it's about 160 pages, so you may not have read it back to back, word for word. So what we're going to do is just go through that, as I say, very succinctly and capture the main parts of the reports in the next few slides. The report is setting out a way forward and recommending a way forward for our greening grounds maintenance and street care service, and this work is part of the Council's Fit for the Future transformation programme under the environment work stream. So currently, the combined services of greening, grounds maintenance and street care and services cost about £5 million annually, and 1.8 million of that is contracted to our grounds maintenance contractor. And as we said, that contract ends in October 26. As part of the Fit for the Future programme, the council has got an ambition to achieve £1 million saving across those various service areas during the programme term. And the programme at the moment is giving us that real opportunity to take a forensic look at those services, what we do, how we do it, and look at exploring a more smarter, collaborative, more effective way of working with others and strengthening our engagement programme with our communities. During the financial years 24-25 and 25-26, we've achieved a total saving of £250,000 towards that 1 million. So we are on track, and that's been through a combination of driving efficiency, effectiveness and collaboration, creating better outcomes with little or no effect on the actual services that are being received by the communities. So this work that will continue and will help to build the foundations for the next stage, which we'll talk you through the details in a moment. Next slide. So as you'll be aware, and as set out in the Cabinet report, we have been on quite a journey when it comes to grounds maintenance. So starting back with a review, as Councillor Goss has mentioned, in 21-22, when we contracted APSI, the Association of Public Sector Excellence, to work with the policy panel and officers to review different operating models at the end of the contract. And that resulted in a decision to extend the current contract and work towards an in-house model at the end of the contract. Now, with the Fit for the Future programme being launched, that's initiated a further review of the operating model, but to consider more closely the work of the street care and safety team, who operate and work in alignment with the grounds maintenance work. So APSI have been recommissioned to do this work, and we're going to talk through their findings in a moment. So just for clarity, because sometimes it can be missed, who are the greening and street care and safety team? Well, they're at the heart of maintaining and enhancing the spaces that we live, work and we play in. So together these teams, they cut across all of these different areas, and they ensure that Colchester remains a vibrant, green and safe place for our residents, businesses and visitors alike. So as you see, it's not just managing our grass, it's lots of other things as well.
Okay, so 5 key options were considered in relation to grounds maintenance, and actually what we should have said is the consultant who did the piece of work from APSI is online should you have any questions in the report that was provided. So option 1 was around keep using outside companies, so re-tender, so continue to hire a company like ID Verdi to do the work. It could be viewed as the easiest option because things stay the same and we don't have to make big changes. However, it might not save as much money and the council would have less control over how things are done. Option 2 was around a local authority trading company known as a LATCO. So this is when the council creates its own company or joins an existing one like Amphora to provide the services. The council owns the company, which gives it more control. It's a good long-term option, but APSI felt that setting it up or joining takes time and planning, so could be something for the future. Option 3 was to bring it back under council control, so an in-house model. And as already alluded to, this gives us the opportunity to directly manage the services, like hiring staff, taking care of the operations. Gives us the ability to be more flexible in terms of utilising the resource. It might cost less over time because there's no middle company taking a profit, but it requires a lot of management. Option 4 was share services with another council, so 2 or more councils working together to provide services by teaming up. This could save us money and resources, and again APSI felt this option could be a long-term solution, but it depends on finding another council willing to share the work, and of course we'll talk about LGR and things in a bit. And then there was actually a 5th option of an in-house and outside company, so a hybrid model, looking at some services being handled directly by the council, but others still be done by outside companies, for things perhaps such as the sports park or the Sem and Creme, for example. Next slide, please, Owen. So the preferred option and the proposed option from APSI is an in-house grounds maintenance and street scene model for the reasons as shown on the screen. They suggest that this option offers flexibility in how the service can be delivered and adapted to meet our changing needs. By matching resources like staff and equipment directly to the service requirements, we can ensure efficiency and avoid unnecessary waste. Sorry, it's been a long day. Additionally, this creates synergy with existing council services, as Rosa alluded to earlier, integrating smoothly with not just operational but the broader functions of the council. Next slide, please, Owen. So obviously with the recent publication of the government's white paper on English devolution, we're facing potentially rapid changes due to LGR, local government reorganisation, and this presents us a critical juncture for us to reassess our Fit for the Future programme and strategic priorities. So while all essential services outlined in the programme must continue, there is obviously an immediate need to address the future of grounds maintenance services because obviously the contract is coming to an end. So we need to carefully evaluate whether we proceed immediately with the fully proposed integrated street scene service. So given the circumstances, what we're recommending is prioritising the transition of grounds maintenance to an in-house service, which will allow us to align with the strategic needs of adapting to the LGR changes. It offers flexibility to implement necessary efficiencies and also provides the opportunity to assess the effectiveness of the new service structure before moving towards a broader integration of services. So the phased approach will ensure we remain adaptable while making informed decisions that best serve our strategic objectives in a rapidly changing environment. So as you'll see there, what we're asking for is to agree a discovery phase to assess the requirements to bring grounds maintenance in-house, agree the direction of travel to a street scene service in the future alongside what will then be the established grounds maintenance service, whilst also recognising the impact of LGR on this work and the opportunities it might bring. So that's just setting out there what the discovery phase is. Sorry, next slide, Owen, sorry, I've got it in front of me. So an 18-month preparation and mobilisation, including a discovery phase over the next 6 to 8 months. We'll focus on evaluating the options and the service standards. Obviously, we'll work with partners as part of the LGR to consider opportunities going forward and sort of harmonisation of service across the organisations that we might be partnered with. And obviously this will include a review of assets and devolution, because obviously ABCD is a big part of this work. So looking at actually what can we devolve to parish, town councils, local community groups, for example, and mobilise the plan. So that's it from us in a succinct nutshell.
Okay, thank you. Right, I can see a number of hands. I will just ask a question of Councillor Goss to start with, as is Chairman's prerogative. I guess I'd like some insight into your philosophical thoughts on this, because obviously you will know from your own ward that that now the hospital has outsourced its grounds maintenance just very recently, and so I just wondered if I'm not being political, but I'm just trying to understand, you know, where you have a large organisation making a decision to do the opposite of what you're proposing, and is that because they have a very rigid and a less complex set of tasks to be fulfilled, and we're broader, and you want flexibility by having in-house? What is your thinking, or does it not even come into it, what the Colchester Hospital is doing?
Well, it does actually. So a couple of points to correct of factually inaccuracy, just to say that the ID Verdi contract is 1.9 million, not 1.8 million. And the second point to correct, which was Chairman's prerogative, is actually the hospital bought its grounds maintenance back in-house. So what they've outsourced is all the cleaning, and what they call soft FM. The grounds maintenance was actually brought back in-house because it was a separate contract. And Steve Last, who is a resident of Mile End, he's no longer an employee of the hospital, was actually the Deputy Director of Facilities, because he's a close personal friend of mine. And they saw a cost saving, and they also had more flexibility, and the service was improved. So to give you an example, I litter pick Turner Road pretty much every week, as you know, and there's a green lung that goes across the front of the hospital where everyone was protesting, who have just been outsourced, sadly, or will be. That is actually part of the hospital. Now, they never used to litter pick it, or the grounds maintenance contractors didn't. Now the staff do. They're really proud they achieve more because they work there, and it is a fantastic setting. So we did actually talk to the hospital about possible shared services in conversations I've had, not just along grounds maintenance. Could we share apprentices, you know, all that kind of thing. So there's been some conversations with Pam. So, you know, I do get a bit strategic occasionally over a Costa coffee. But I've always been of the mindset that you get more flexibility. So to give you a good example, during COVID, where we had some of the hottest summers, where literally we had mud or, you know, dead grass, and we redirected ID Verdi to go and do other tasks within the contract. But what we couldn't do during COVID was where we redeployed Leisure World staff and other staff rather than put them on furlough, we had some staff on the back of dust carts. What the ID Verdi contract or any outsourced contract doesn't allow you to do is just completely change what people are doing. So I've always said, if you have staff in-house, you've got more flexibility, more firepower, and you can therefore deal with emergencies quicker or redeploy people, because, you know, we had, you know, people on reception on the back of dust carts from Leisure World because they wanted passionately to serve the public and help their colleagues and friends, whereas the ID Verdi guys might have wanted to do that, but unfortunately, they couldn't. And I think with ID Verdi, it's no secret, I've spoken about it in public, I've had to meet the managing director several times to talk about service inadequacy. You know, and where we get complaints not that far from where certain people live, where you know, there's been one bag of rubbish, and rather than being using a bit of initiative and moving one bag of rubbish, the person just mowed round it. You know, and again, I just think you get a better quality of service and a better finish, better standard, although we do have standards in the contract, because you've got more control over it. I really, really do. And, you know, I think it's been proven in a number of industries that outsourcing is fashionable one minute because it's cheap. Where it's cheap normally is that you outsource the service, but as soon as you want to change anything, that's where companies make their money. You know, whether it's IT, whether it's HR outsourcing, whatever it is, they bid cheap. You get, and then you realise you've missed something out of the contract, so you add it on, and that's where you get stuffed. So strategically, I think bringing it back in house mirrors what the other councils we may get married to. Pretty much, you know, they use a bit of outsourcing, and they might use some tree surgeons to do some tree cutting. We've actually brought some of that back in house to save money. And potentially do that as a cross-selling service to the public. So this is opportunity. This is opportunity.
Okay. Thank you for the clarity on the hospital front. That's the last time that I will listen to what ChatGPT says that is in the Morning Star, which was where that source came from. So good clarity on that, though. They did outsource some things, didn't they? Okay, I saw Councillor Willett, Deputy Chairman.
Yeah, Chairman, it's a strange life on the scrutiny panel. The last item was looking how we could get rid of 20-40 million pounds of government funds by pouring it into projects in the town centre. When we come to an essential municipal service which everyone needs and must be delivered to a good quality standard, we're dealing with how can we're commenting on the plan by Cabinet to ensure that it's possible to further reduce essential public services in the Fit for the Future programme over the next 3 years, and looking to a solution which can be salami sliced to make those cuts happen. I'm sorry, I'm going off the point, but it's a very wide contrast between the two items.
Do members wish me to stop Councillor Willits and call for a break, and we can have the second part of the cliffhanger, because it is 7:30, or should we carry on a little bit further? What would you folks? Carry on a little bit longer? Okay, as you were.
And so I'm not quite sure what particular item, where it appears that the decision has already been made for political purposes, but I think as a panel we should just look at it as though it was a sort of semi-new issue. And the first thing is the cabinet paper is there for a specific purpose of getting a decision made in a particular way, whereas for scrutiny we tend to look a little wider and say what are the basis for this decision, and are they sound and are they well argued. And my first comment is that I guess all the information we need to know is there in the sort of the 100 pages of information that we have before us, but it doesn't really pull together, you know, what are the essential assumptions which have gone into to producing this decision. I mean, the first one that I'd ask for more guidance on is the how the costs compare for the options that we saw on the screen just a little earlier, which appear on page 116 of the order paper, or A83, 84 in the pack if you're using the apps notation, where it clearly shows that contrasting the DSO, where we do it ourselves, possible outsourcing to a lacto, which we can call amphora, or outsourced, that outsourcing is still shown as the cheapest way of doing things, but politically it's not the most acceptable one. If one needs a flexible service, as Councillor Goss was describing, where you need to perhaps be able to alter the terms of reference of the service at short notice, and also as the portfolio holder for resources would want, the ability to reduce and turn off perhaps the service to a certain extent if the going gets difficult on Fit for the Future. The first question I have, Chairman, is that the dialogue which goes along with the lacto or the amphora options seemed particularly vague, and I had difficult to understand it. And I wondered whether this was an estimate of what amphora might do if they were asked to run this service or assimilate this service, or whether amphora have been asked. And what we have in paragraph A84 is amphora's view of how they could run this service as a service operator against a service level agreement from us. And this wasn't really explained in the paper. Can I stop on that?
Do you want to do it point by point? So we're at A84.
Several other
in the APS report.
This is sort of significant one which really impacts on other questions that one might ask.
If it relates to A84 and the APSI report, I'd like to invite the APSI consultant who's online to explain the detail behind that graph that I think you're responding to, Councillor Willits. Darren, are you able to come in?
Good evening, everyone. Good evening.
We can hear you in here, so that's great, Darren. Over to you.
Right, thank you very much. Picking up the first point with the graphs, the costings are for in-house against external are very much based on the actual operational cost. What you get with an outsourced option is a cost for the council to manage, which goes on top of that cost, and also an extra cost for doing extra works. as Councillor sort of Goss alluded to earlier on, if something's missed off the contract or there's extra works that need to be done, the council has to find that funding as part of the contract price, and it's over and above the tendered cost that a contractor would put in. Whereas, obviously, if you're doing it yourself, there's not the monitoring and management costs for that service, and also probably 60% of any extra works cost will be in your already costed labour, which is sort of built in. Probably a little bit more of that, probably more like 80% on some works where the materials isn't that much. It's just time. So that's probably where you've got a little bit of difference in terms of the costing that doesn't directly show that you've got that indirect cost underneath of council management, etc. And picking up the LATCO, the most of the work we did on the LATCO initially was based on other local authority practice of modelling based on sort of on costs and things like that. Certainly, it wasn't something with Amphoria that I sort of did discuss with. So it's not an Amphoria point of view. It really is an APSI point of view based on work we've done with LATCOs in other councils.
Thank you, Chairman. I mean, the report does go into some of the differential costings, much taken with the information supplied in paragraph A22, where it's explained in detail that local government employees doing this work would have an additional on cost of some 30%. Because they work only 37 hours a week rather than 40 hours. There are all the pension costs associated with an in-house employee and several other issues mentioned. Now, if we were to ask Amphora for their view on how much they could do this work for, they would not be constrained by employing people as local government employees, although there was a note of caution about what happened when Iverdi folks found out they were being paid less than council people doing similar work. But nevertheless, in view of that answer, I would be much reassured if we could get a quotation or a rough estimate from Amphora. You know, this is not a number conjured out of the air from talking with other authorities, but from our own captive company group on whether they could manage this particular service at something approaching the Verdi costs, but with the flexibility that Council wants, in that they would be more receptive to changes to work specifications and meeting what one might see as emergencies which the council has to face, which would be used by external companies as an opportunity to raise the money. And one does wonder whether the Cabinet should be aware of that alternative as a costed option before they make this decision.
Reasonable challenge, Councillor Goss.
We can obviously, the whole idea of scrutiny, of course, is to come up with other options or other notes to send to Cabinet as part of the report, of course. So that's why this is here. It's not a fait accompli, as some people have mentioned, and of course this does actually go back to the direction that scrutiny gave us back in 2021. So this is continuing on that journey, although the world has changed somewhat. I couldn't really imagine Amphora Trading running a gardening service personally, because they've got no experience of it. I know they run some of the other commercial services. They would probably take time to pull that together. And I think the point of going with APSI is they are the experts. They have managed this process with other councils, as you've heard from Darren, and that's why he's looked at the various different options, comparing it to what other councils do. So I do think there's been quite a thorough piece of work done on the more strategic piece. I'm actually personally quite satisfied with it, and I think that the paper's got, you know, a good level of detail. But strategically, this fits with, I think, the direction of travel. And to give you a really good, firm example, we had to cut back the amount of grass cuts we did from 14 to 6, because that was part of the cost saving. And we do 8 cuts on some of the sea land and sports pitches and things. But in essence, we literally sliced off 60% of the cuts, or whatever the percentage is. I'm not Carol Vorderman. So that's what we had to do to save money. If you've got an in-house team, you can control that amount of cuts much more flexibly. And actually, because of climate change, and we're seeing it now, the grass is still growing through the period when historically it hasn't. So the grass this time of year is actually longer than it has been in previous seasons, which means that it will cause an issue operationally if we start cutting it in April. So we've had to say to IDV, can we squish it to come back slightly? Because the longer the grass gets, the more difficult it is for the current machinery to cut it, because you need different types of blades and grass cutters for different environments. And climate change is here, for all those climate change deniers and Donald Trump. Things are changing out there. There's no question, and therefore that is affecting the speed at which things are growing. Now, if we have a really hot summer and it pretty much napalms all the grass, then you literally wouldn't cut it because there's nothing to cut. So those are some prime examples of what have happened in more recent seasons, and nobody really knows what summer we're going to have this year or next year. Is it going to be wet? Is it going to be hot? And that really affects service delivery when you're then managing it in a contractual amount of cuts. If you bring it back in-house, you can control it and manage it with a lot more flexibility, which then follows weather patterns and climate change. So that for me is a really strong partial business case to bring it in-house.
So just to add to that, I think, yes, it would be possible to get Amphora to do a quote, but actually that is quite a significant piece of work because of the amount of land that we're dealing with across the city and the various specifications. It shouldn't be underestimated. And I think that the point to remember is what we're asking for, what the recommendation is seeking, is to proceed to a discovery phase. So as part of that discovery phase, we can do the work to see what it looks like bringing it in-house, and potentially we could also discover what it could look like to outsource it to a LATCO. But we've also got to bear in mind that this will be a phased approach. So phase 2, potentially, as part of the LGR work, will be a street scene model to bring grounds maintenance and street care and safety together, because they're working in the same areas. Quite often, as I think we've alluded to in the report, and certainly within the APSI report, you might have an ID Verdi member of staff going to the Seven to do some work, and 2 hours later you've got a street care and safety operative going to the Seven Creme to do different work. So that should be considered as part of this, that we're working towards a kind of unified service. So and that's, yeah, thank you.
Okay. Look, I am conscious of the time. I think it is right that we do have a 10-minute break, actually, in a couple of minutes. And I just want to quickly jump in, sorry, Deputy Chairman, with a question which may help in the long run. If the consensus tonight is that the view of the room is that we should consider going down this discovery phase, I guess what I'd like to understand is, what is the risk of going down that discovery phase and then getting to the end of that phase and realising we need to go to the market, and because then effectively your supplier might be recognising, oh dear, well, they're about to hit a cliff edge of the end of the contract. They still need the grass cut, they still need graves dug, etc. Is there a huge risk in that? And I'm sure it would come up anyway, but I'd like to know an answer to that if that's possible. At some point, feel free now if you'd like, and I'm interrupting Councillor Willetts, I'm sorry, or do it later.
It's a good question, and I'll give you a good answer. The contract ends in October 2026. That is the cliff edge, and that contract is dead. It's ready for the shredder. It will not be renewed. It cannot be extended, and the price mechanism in there is also out of date, wildly out of date. So it's gone. So even if we do the discovery phase, that's exactly what it is. It's a discovery phase to then inform the next steps. And actually out of that, should it suddenly change, and of course don't forget we've got to think of this behemoth coming over the hill, which is local government reorganisation, and that could inform what happens. Because if you're going to merge 3 organisations and bits of Essex County Council, what you can't have is 3 different waste collection methodologies or 3 different ways to manage blades of grass, because otherwise you don't get the operational efficiencies that is expected from the Labour Party and the Tory Party pushing this at a national level. That's why they're doing it. They're not doing it for any other reason. They're doing it to save money for the country. That's the motivator. So that, for me, is something you've all got to bear in mind.
Okay, yes, Ms Randall.
Sorry, Chair. So just to add to what Councillor Goss has said, absolutely there is a risk that we could get through the discovery phase, but that's why we're doing it now, because whatever the outcome of that discovery phase is, we will get to a point where we will have 12 months, and we know there is 12 months if we need to order equipment, 12 months if we had to go out to re-tender, 12 months if we had to. So that's why the discovery phase is so important, so that we leave ourselves enough time, whatever the outcome of that phase is.
Okay, what I'm going to do is ask us to have a break now, to be back here ready sharp to be going at 8 o'clock. I would like us to have another half an hour, up to half an hour on this. Okay, so I'm sorry, Councillor Willits, for interrupting you, but you will get more time. And then, courtesy to our other item tonight, at 8:30, I'd like us to be in a position to get onto the KPIs with a view to try and wrap this evening up by 9ish, if that's okay, everyone. So back here at 8, please. Let's have a break. Thank you. Fair enough. Yeah, that was a decade ago. Okay, 8 o'clock. Let's reconvene, folks. Thanks very much for prompt return. Reminds me of David King's Zoom sessions during lockdown when he had his clock on. Okay, right. Dennis, I interrupted you very rudely mid-flow. So if you want to pick us back off, and then I'm going to go to Councillor Appleton. I think Councillor Rowe has a question as well, and we'll see where we're at.
No, Chairman, you interrupted me just at the right time, because I think we've come to the conclusion, really, though, this is a politically driven decision. It's the only one that is really tenable moving towards local government reform, and therefore the normal business of scrutiny, of us looking for further options, evaluating the options and so on, is not going to be welcomed by Cabinet. So I'm not going to ask any more questions on this one.
Okay. We'll keep the door open for you if you'd like, Councillor Willis. Councillor Appleton.
Okay, thank you, Chair. For me, it's just to understand a bit more about the discovery phase, how you plan to approach that work and what the output would look like. I know it's probably an obvious question, but just get some comfort around that. Thank you.
So obviously we will work with partner authorities to understand what they deliver, how they deliver it, how they've made efficiencies. We will look at how savings can be made. A lot of it will be around looking at the specification of what we deliver now. Obviously working with, as we alluded to earlier, considering actually not just what we can deliver, but what could others deliver. We've already started having conversations with some parish councils, for example, who are really keen to take on play parks or bits of open space, for example, to kind of just bring that all together to look at what could we deliver going forward, notwithstanding the comments around how important it is to local residents. What can others deliver? What can we do in terms of reducing that duplication? So looking at what the grounds maintenance team do, what the street care and safety team do to try and reduce the number of visits to each location. So all of that to come out at the end and look at actually if we're delivering it in-house, what can we devolve, what can we stop doing, what can we do differently, what can we do with other councils, and all of that in the round to come up with actually this is what it could look like and this is what it would cost us to deliver it in that way.
Very good and very encouraging answer. I mean, during the break, Councillor Rowe and I were just talking about parishes. I'm sure you're well aware how parishes operate with the regular monthly, in some cases bi-monthly meetings. So be sure to make sure that the clerks are kept abreast with what you're thinking, with any clear deadlines to set out, because sometimes it can take quite a while for decisions to be made in parishes because they meet every month or maybe less then. So I'd urge that the clerks are appraised of your thoughts as well as writing to probably the chair or chairman or chairpersons. Okay, Councillor Rowe.
Fair enough, Chair. Thank you very much. I think some of these have probably already been answered, but I think from the exploratory phase that we're talking about here, and I think sort of some of this has already been answered, but effectively, I think we're going to need to have a list of how potential service measures will be achieved without compromising the essential services that we're trying to deliver. So I think you sort of alluded to it just in your last answer, but ultimately I think what we need is to have a long list of this is what we currently deliver, this is what we're planning to deliver in the future, this is how much it's going to cost, basically lay it out for scrutiny so that we can, and for Cabinet, so that we can identify and understand and make the best decision there with Colchester. I'm sure that's already there, but I suppose we wouldn't be doing our job if we didn't try to scrutinise it properly, so bear with me on these. So I suppose the contingency plans as well. So I suppose we sort of touched on these as well, but we'd like to know, if, I think we've spoken about the hard deadline already, we'd need to know what the contingency plans are in place to prevent disruption. I'm sure that's already been thought about, but that's something that we would need to see, and that was something that we would expect to be delivered in the exploratory phase. What are the estimated costs of setting up the in-house services, including sort of, I don't know, like the depot for infrastructure, equipment procurement, etc. Like that, I don't know if that was in the document, but
Well,
I
there's
haven't
a suggestion
seen
of
any.
capital costs and leasing, isn't there?
Yeah.
But some of the meat on the flesh maybe is
All of those costs will need to be seen, and I understand that they're not going to be here this evening and that we can't see them now, but it's as recommendations of something that we need to see in the documents. I think it's also important to, the council still has green investment ideas and planned sort of views into green technologies. I know we've spoken about, electric bins in the past, electric bin lorries in the past, at great length in this panel from various members. What investment in planned green technologies? Councillor Goss mentioned climate change, so obviously we should bring that into the area as well. And I think this is already sort of covered by the fact that we brought in external help, but what lessons have been learned from other councils which have transitioned into in-house. I'd like to see how that's been managed in the past, what pitfalls they've faced, what lessons we can learn. And if if we know that Tendring and Braintree already do this, you've already said you've reached out to them. It would be great to reach out to them. And the point on the parish councils, I completely echo, and I'm glad you mentioned that you'd already started speaking to them. I think they would probably be quite interested to speak about this. Obviously, they have a vested interest in their local areas, and I'm sure they would be very helpful in pushing this along. So I don't have anything else.
So absolutely. So just a reminder that obviously this is a recommendation to proceed to the discovery phase. We would then be bringing back a full business case to scrutiny of what the recommendations are. So at that point, it would be a firm recommendation to bring it in-house. And clearly that would set out what we currently deliver, what we're proposing to deliver, what the impact and consequences, positive or negative, of those changes. Absolutely, contingency, we're already starting to talk about sort of rescue recovery plans and things. One thing to note as a positive, I guess, with the U service going live potentially 1st of November 2026, that's a quieter period in a sense. It's not the grass cutting period. So from that perspective, it's a good time to bring it back in-house. There is some indicative information within the APSI report, but understanding not everyone will have had time to read it fully because it is a really detailed report about potential capital costs for depot, plant machinery and and sort of revenue costs as well. So that is in there. Technology, again, absolutely, it's something. Lucy is a great advocate of these robot lawnmowers, for example. She loves a bit of tech. Climate, obviously, head of sustainability, I oversee the climate and sustainability team as well. So absolutely, the two services will work sort of in tandem to think about what the opportunities are in terms of biodiversity and those things as well. And lessons learned, again, there's some within the APSI report giving an indication of others, but we've already had conversations with Tendring, Braintree and others to start to think about what can that look like, but we'll make sure that's all in the full business case.
Okay, Councillor Law.
Thanks very much to everyone for their views and the presentation this evening. That's been really helpful because it was a very big and dense report. So appreciate that. And something I know is touched on when we had the chair's briefing, and this is probably a bit of a way down the line, but sort of fitting in with discussions we've had about LGR and working with other local authorities. We've discussed how that they've brought these sorts of services in-house, and that was something I was going to touch on, was about sort of consulting them on how that's worked. But I was also interested to think about, in terms of flexibility for the future and sort of cross-working more. I was talking to some Ida Verdi staff members out recently in my ward, and one of them was telling me about some kit he was using So they were chopping down things, and then it was kind of chopping stuff and scattering it over and like acting as a mulch, and it was like reducing cost, more sustainable. But he was kind of talking about that it was like he was the one sort of main person that was using it. Obviously, there's going to be certain specialist items that people are going to have a sufficient amount of training for. But I was just interested about any idea whether there's sort of higher productivity outputs when you've got more flexibility when things are brought in-house, people can learn different skills, any possible benefits with, upskilling and that adding interest and variety and helping with staff retention and cost.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, so one of the things actually that was suggested by one of the contractor staff just a couple of days ago is whether or not we could have a consultation group with a group of the contractors, because they're the ones doing the work at the moment. So we would absolutely, arrange that and listen to their views and ideas in terms of, improving service specification, looking at multi-skilling. We had a listen, learn, lead session up at Shrub End a couple of weeks ago, and actually one of the members of staff there was saying actually if it comes in-house and eventually if it merges with street care and safety, they were quite excited by being able to upskill and do more rather than sticking to what they do at the moment. So, you could envisage a time where perhaps you have geographically based teams who are responsible for their area and everything within their area, so that would require training and upskilling to enable to do them, because you tend to find then they have pride of place if they're responsible for their patch, as it were. So absolutely all of that will be considered as part of this in terms of, and actually you tend to find it increases motivation if you invest in the training and development of staff and give them opportunities to sort of grow and upskill. So that will all be considered.
I can come back.
Yep.
Yeah, no, and it just also, it strikes me as well, it's sort of a whole ABCD approach. If you've got sort of geographical teams, they can work with the community partners more, and it sort of just offers more possibility, doesn't it, for community involvement as well.
Councillor Rowe.
Thank you, Chair. Apologies. One additional question around Fit for the Future and just the savings that are projected in this. I think at the beginning, and sort of mentioned in some of the documents, we stated that there was £250,000 worth of savings that had already been acquired or are projected to be, so they'd already been acquired.
So there was £100,000, well, actually we've underachieved in 24-25, so it's £84,000 in 24-25, but then 160 whatever, so it's 250 across the 2 years that have been achieved across greening, grounds maintenance and street care and safety, not just the grounds maintenance contract.
Okay, but that leaves us with an additional 750,000 savings. Do we know then if we're going to be, if additional savings will be put on top of that? Because I'm understanding that the Fit for the Future goes some way to solving the issues, but in previous meetings that we've had, it's been, it looks as if we're going to have to go further than the Fit for the Future has been discussed already. So do we know if any more of this is coming onto here, and how will that impact the delivery that we have? Thank you.
Shall I just bring in Mrs. Bredman on this one?
Yeah, so I think it's fair to say that it's a big service area. We talked about 5 million, didn't we? So while at this stage there is no set expectation for more than that million, the million's going to be tough, I think, given that we already know there's going to be inflationary pressures on that service, and everyone's going to want it to deliver. But equally, I don't think at this stage we couldn't say there would be no more expectation because of the size of the service area that we're talking about. We haven't buttoned that down yet. And again, with LGR, we are looking at a very different makeup in the future, aren't we? We're looking at some efficiencies that will come out of the merger with other councils. So it won't all be down to our services in our area. So I think the new unitary will definitely, you're talking midterm financial forecast here, so the next kind of 4-5 years time.
that I think is where we're, you know, it's still going to require additional savings from somewhere, not necessarily here, but in some of these big service areas inevitably.
Agreed, but we're assuming that, I mean, this is, the assumption here is that Colchester needs to save this money. Once we merge with any other and create a unitary, I'm assuming they'll have their own issues. So relying on other councils to save the money could be long-term detrimental if we're looking at, I mean, it doesn't seem like it's a sensible, I don't know, do you see what I mean? It doesn't seem like it's a sensible thing to say that we can, don't worry, we'll look at it in the future because we're going to be merging with other councils. I'm assuming they face the same concerns and the same issues that we do. So as part of the savings, we need to sort of see how is it going to impact, how is the £750,000 additional service degradation going to impact residents and going to impact people of Colchester. If we do any additional, then there needs to be some sort of idea as to how any additional savings are going to be made above and beyond that. Because at the moment, when we hear from the budget meetings, a lot of it is, well, we'll just find them. And I think we need to move away from that we've got a good record of finding them in the past to let's have a plan and an idea of what we're going to do in the future. And I think that needs to be put into the recommendation or into the exploratory phase.
So, Councillor, I'm hearing you're looking for clarity on the options ahead and just being open book about where savings need to be made. What could that look like is what you're asking.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, especially as we point out that we're most likely going into some sort of coalition with other councils. We should be, you know, they're going to look through the books, they're going to see what we've got, so we might as well just be open about it and have ideas that we can bring to the table to say these are the savings that we make.
I think that's very fair, Councillor Rowe. Okay, unless I've massively misread the room. Oh, Councillor Scaldis, go for it.
Yeah, I just wanted to raise a risk that we haven't spoken about. And one big risk that we will have bringing it in-house is we will need to buy our own equipment, which means the big one will be obviously big lawnmower, kind of tractor lawnmower, probably John Deere type ones. And I guess the issue is, firstly, where do we store these? Because we'll need quite a few. I don't know if Ivy Verde, we rent land to them or give them land to do this, so that may not be a problem. But also they do break down quite a lot. So have we factored in those costs as well? I mean, other than that, I think it is a good idea. And I think, as you say, other teams may be able to even get to use them and upskill. But that is a risk that, have we factored that into the sort of finances?
I think we touched on it, but go on.
Yeah, so in terms of storage, I think the model that we're going to look at initially will be kind of satellite depots. There won't be one big depot. And we do lease some sites to Ivy Verde at the moment, so they will come back to us, but we'll probably look to upgrade some of those and obviously look at CCTV and things. And again, we're looking at the purchase option, but also the lease option in terms of vehicles. And obviously any that we purchase, we would be looking at maintenance regime as part of the costs of that going forward.
Okay. Right, thank you everyone. Unless I've massively misread the room, I think that we should note well, thank you very much to the consultant for bearing with us and all of his 100 and can't remember how many pages, but it was good. I think scrutiny has raised some legitimate questions, in particular around this concept of, you know, could Amphora come up with a business model based on using potentially non-local authority rates and add-on costs, etc. That was a legitimate question from the Deputy Chairman here. But ultimately, I think what we do need to do tonight is to note the work and to let officers move into the discovery phase. That is not giving anyone a blank cheque, literally. We have some legitimate questions here, but I think I'm reading the room in that we are all very open-minded and we're not predetermined. We're not being ideological about in-house versus out-house. We just want the best service and best value for money for residents and for this authority. priority. So I think that's what we probably need to do, and I'm happy to formally make that recommendation unless there's challenge, but I think that's the consensus. And within the discovery phase, scrutiny is going to need to see the business cases and very, very clear set out comparisons between outsourced, in-house, hybrid, and bearing all in mind that we've got local government reform and none of us know where that's going. And that's something that we've all got to be alive to. And that's where I think I'm at.
Chair, can I raise that we recommend that the points that we've raised this evening are added into the business case to make sure there is, and I'm sure they will be, but just to make sure that there is zero, that there's pure clarity across what we're looking for with regards to a business case. At least things that we've mentioned this evening should be in that business case. I don't think anything that's been said by individual members here tonight has been questioned to be an inappropriate question or not helpful. It's all been very constructive. So if the clerk can assist in the end with making sure that that is captured for you guys to go away. And I'm just going to reiterate the other point that we've got parish councils that meet every other month. So decision making can be slow. So set really clear time scale expectations for people to meet to help you, because it might be that there are green patches out there in parishes that could be looked after in a different way, but we're going to need to give people time to get their head around that and have the meetings that happen in parishes, etc. That's my plea. Okay. Are we all in agreement? We're going to let officers move to the discovery phase via the leadership of Councillor Goss. Thank you very much. Okay, great. Thank you. That concludes that item. Thank you very much, everyone. Right, we're just rearranging the chairs and getting ready for the next phase. And we're going to be welcoming up to the floor Councillor Jay, who we haven't seen for a while. The keeper, thank you everyone, the keeper of KPIs and other matters. And thank you very much for your patience. I'm sorry, it had to be someone at the end of the evening. But we are there and we're ahead of my schedule because it's not even 8:30 yet. So, without further ado, if we're all comfortable, we have a matter of KPIs to look at, and I will hand the microphone over to Councillor Jay to introduce this item that we can then scrutinise.
Okay, thank you. Good evening. So the panel are invited to consider the corporate key performance indicators. These are the targets for 25-26. Which obviously monitor our business activities and are linked to our long-term strategic action plan. I hope everybody is aware that an updated table was issued this afternoon. That followed some further work between myself, Jane Goodenough, and heads of service. So thanks to them for the more detailed clarification and having been asked to respond very late last week. So it's come together in quite short time scale. Following some input from leadership and from me as portfolio holder. I think we've got a range of realistic and manageable targets.
Can I jump in just quickly, Councillor Jay, if you don't mind, just because it's a very good game of spot the difference. If you can, that'd be great. I just wonder if you're able to remind folks the differences in the two documents just before we get going.
The main differences will be with the fly tipping and the affordable, the temporary accommodation in households, the two that were changed. And I think one of the CBH, which was...
It was a hard game of spot the difference, but I did...
I did know. I will, when I come to it,
okay,
I will highlight
don't worry.
it. I'm going to go through it by exception, so
okay,
just the ones that are moving, and I will pick up on the third one. I think there was a third. Okay, so if we start with council tax collected, there's been a slight reduction in the proposed target, similar to many authorities that we benchmark against, driven by cost of living. I think the rate of collection is slightly lower than it has been, but obviously still significantly good.
Councillor, I'm very sorry again to do this to you. I'm not having a great evening. It's probably the amount of Dr. Pepper I had. Would members appreciate questions line by line, or do it at the end? What would we prefer? At the end? Okay, then please proceed. I apologise.
So business rates, HRA, I think are consistent with where they are at the moment. And what we've done in the last few days is actually put a third column in. So you've got the 24-25 target, latest performance as at month 6, and where we're proposing to go in 25-26. So I hope that can give you some idea of trends and how we're currently performing to current targets. Looking at garden waste, the figure you've got for 24-25, this is one of the ones that changed and didn't change, but we got some clarity on, was actually the number of customers. We've got about 40% of households at the moment, which is over the initial target. What we've moved to is a target of actual purchase bins, because some customers are buying more than one. So the month 6 position is 25,938, and we're going to be putting in a target of 27,000 next year, which will deliver the budget that we've got. The next one that probably needs looking at and has changed is the fly tipping incidents. So we had a target of 24-25 of 2,100. Prior year to that, it was actually 1962, I think. Looking at latest performance, you can all see that there's actually quite a considerable upwards trend. I did look at the figures. The 3 months, September to December, have actually dropped, but we are anticipating or estimating that that will continue to rise. So we could end up sort of 4.7, 4.9 by year end. The team have decided that we'll look at about a target of 3,700. This is accounting for some expected increases in property growth and taking account of some of the interventions that are being planned by the service and are in place as of this month. I've spoken to Rosa, I'm sure she'll happily confirm, but looking at the fly tipping, it's actually not garden waste, it's not waste that generally goes to the tip, and what seems to be the problem is household waste. So it's a behaviour issue, people leaving bags of household rubbish by bins. There is something underway with scrap that has been started, that's county-wide, an initiative that has started this month and is hoping to make an impact. We could talk about it later, but I have also, following the scrutiny recommendation in December, we've been out in touch with parishes. We've had responses from 11 parishes to a number of questions about their capacity, any budget they've got, any interest in enforcement. Out of the 11 that responded, I got some quite detailed responses. Only 4 are interested in being more proactive. What was mentioned over and over again is their capacity and any budget. I think it's probably worthwhile going back to them, and I think we've just heard that that's going to be part of the wider strategy. I think there's enough in there that we could do something quite usefully with using parishes, and maybe they just need to be encouraged to look at their budgets in a different way, or the support that's available. The next one that we have actually adjusted is monitoring the number of households in temporary accommodation, and I don't think anybody can fail to be aware that the figures are going up. I think as at March 24, over March 24, the numbers have gone up about 38%, and we're currently running end of January at 446 households. We suggested perhaps that we ease the current 4.73 target and move upwards to 5, and CBH have welcomed and supported this recommendation, but it does need to go to the CBH board. Average days to relet, currently at 43.08, they're suggesting a 55-day, which is actually based on the upper quartile of some benchmark data and gives them the team a bit more flexibility. The other one that has shifted repairs within target timescale is moved from 90 to 91%. The target is actually a blend of routine, urgent and emergency repairs, and the emergency performance is higher than non-emergency. The target's considered to be challenging but realistic and follows a direction of continuous improvement. I think the final target in terms of homes is the customer satisfaction with latest repair, and I've had some discussions with the portfolio holder. There's a difference between the in-house and external contractors. The in-house team are generally dealing with high volume, less complex jobs and possibly lead to better rates of satisfaction, but the largest contractor has been consistently underperforming, and the volume of work being passed to them has been reduced to close to zero. So this is something that is under constant monitoring. I don't know what anybody else would like to look at. Corporate sickness, we know that currently we've got a lot more detail on that now between NEP, neighbourhoods and CCC employees, that it's running higher than it has been. But I think when I came to scrutiny in December, we mentioned that since November there is a new occupational health team in place, and hopefully we'll start to see some of those figures sort of dropping downwards in the next few months. The only other target that has shifted over last year is the social value in procurement, where the target was 70%. We're achieving about 50% at half year, and they're looking at a target for next year of 60%. 24-25 was the first year that this indicator was included, and the target was largely educated guesswork. Because the council's use of procurement frameworks does not tend to include social value, it's been challenging to meet the target. So the target's been revised to give something a bit more realistic whilst also providing some stretch. Has anybody got any particular question?
Oh, there will be questions. I'll kick it off if we may. I'm sad to see, and I accept that targets have to be realistic, because otherwise they become demotivating. But it is sad to see, isn't it, the number of people in temporary households per 1,000 moving up from 4 monthly to 5, and that's in the context that, according to the very latest data before me here, we're building more homes than we're expected to build, at 941 on average over the last 5 years. So something's going wrong there. Around perhaps the type of homes that are being built, I don't know, and there's probably some structural reasons why we're building more houses than we're supposed to be building, and yet we've got people in this temporary accommodation situation. That's quite worrying. That's my initial question. It may not be for you to answer, but I'd like you to note that I've said it.
No, I shall note that. I mean, we're underperforming that target at the moment, and I would hope that we can continue with schemes like Beyond the Box, where we're looking at additional units and similar activity. But I think they just felt that they wanted to have the flexibility of this benchmark.
Okay. I'll open it to the floor. Councillor Moffat.
Thank you, Chairman. So just on the fly tipping, could you give us a bit more detail on what the interventions are? Because that current target there is clearly bringing it down by quite a way, even given the increased housing, etc.
And I build on that one, because you did allude, didn't you, to the fact that quite a number of these incidents might well be people taking household rubbish to municipal bins, which, I mean, actually, although that's not great, it's better than burning it in the back of the garden or throwing it in the hedgerow. So you can see maybe that there's some thought behind it. But do you have any sense of the numbers behind that? Because I mean, us folks in the rural lanes do spot fly tipping now and again. But I want to know that is the large part of the number the people putting stuff next to the bins in the suburbs, for example?
Rosie, would you want to pick that up?
Of course. So we do monitor the level of fly tipping across all the different ward areas. We also look at the type of material as well that's being collected, and that's all part of our statutory reporting. There is an indication, as set out in the report, that this year we're looking towards sort of 5,000 reports of fly tipping, which is not good, but it does every year fluctuates, and it's very difficult to predict. And the pattern of the types of fly tipping does vary. So some years we'll see much higher levels of unauthorised trade waste being collected by unlicensed waste collectors, higher level in rural areas, that kind of thing. At the moment, what we're seeing is that more fly tipping next to litter bins, and there is a perception that that's okay, but it's not. It is classed as fly tipping. So in terms of interventions, Essex County Council, along with all of the partners in Essex, have joined to create a new campaign called Scrap, and we're part of that campaign, and being an Essex-wide broad campaign, that kind of strong message we're hoping will really help influence more locally. Each authority is then taking forward their own individual projects. I don't want to share too much because I don't want to kind of give the game away, but we are doing a really strong campaign in Colchester that we're hoping is going to be really visually impacting, so that residents really do understand that things like leaving a bag of black waste next to a bin is fly tipping, and actually they have a responsibility to get rid of that waste properly, and if not, the worst case scenario is that they end up with a fine and having to pay for stuff. And the amount of time taken by officers to deal with that is taking away from other essential services. So they're going to be the key messages, but I don't want to give away, obviously, what that will look like. But that will come out to you in the next few weeks, and we're really hoping that something that powerful will really help move have an impact on the number of reports that we're getting. But for the next year, it's going to be a key area of our focus in street care and safety, along with doing lots more work around volunteers, because again, that community impact and behaviour change comes from communities much better than enforcement. So that's our key focus going forward.
I've got a vague memory of having had this thought before, but I mean, is there any work being done in local plan or in planning around how we design our new housing? Because I mean, for example, in Europe, you have much more in the way of municipal bin collections where you are encouraged to walk to the end of a street to put your waste, but they have compactors underground, for example. But that's a design thing, isn't it? Because what we're hearing here is that people are almost trying to do the right thing, but the system isn't quite working. And, you know, lo and behold, if we reduce collection of black waste even more, we might get more of it. Anyway, I'm waffling, sorry.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. My first comment is actually on the residual household waste per household. I've just lost off the screen. I think we have in the past asked for a benchmarking on that particular issue, because there seemed to be a spread of opinion as to whether it was good, or what we were achieving was good or bad. And I think on a previous occasion we got what was described as our family statistics, collectors of sort of similar size and problem. I think it would be good if the panel saw where we actually sit county-wide, and admittedly that will include some districts which are dissimilar from us, but it might give us a better idea to where perhaps we should be aiming for, whereas the family statistics didn't seem to be particularly pulling us forward at all. So I wonder whether that is possible. Certainly, if one thinks back 5 years ago, we used to get a regular table of all our waste performance statistics on an Essex-wide basis. Perhaps Essex no longer publish them, but can I ask whether that is available to the panel and whether it could be made available? My second question was on the fly tipping. As I've already said, I'm a great believer in the Victorian merits of municipal services provided to everyone, rather than councils concentrating on providing lots of services to the few. Is it time we had a consultation on whether perhaps we should be increasing the amount of waste we collected? We had a very successful campaign on persuading people that they should recycle whatever they can, and imposing the 3-bag limit on households was part of that that exercise. But if it's going to mean that we're going to have considerable increases in the amount of fly tipping, and we're going to have to employ more wardens to identify where it's been done and prosecute whoever's done it, and if we're even going to pursue people who throw, as was said, a black bag next to the municipal waste bin, thinking that they are actually helping, when in fact they're going to get a fixed penalty notice, is it not time that the scrutiny panel suggested we consult on increasing the allowance of the amount we collect, if that's going to make the city cleaner and healthier and tidier and have less fly tipping? The third question was on social value and the social value component. And I think this is an area we have looked at before, Chairman, and the argument was that if we can let contracts which tease the contractor into providing us with some social benefit, such as ensuring that all the people delivering that contract actually come from within the city, so that we're providing employment, or the contractor will go and paint the school gates while he's painting a council building just down the road. There is benefit in it, but from a scrutiny point of view, it's enlightening to know what the cost of the contracts would be if they didn't include a social value, and has been, as presented earlier, it was suggested that perhaps many of them are in that category, and where there is a social value component, splitting off what is the base value of the contract and what it is when the social value is added in. If, for instance, it costs more to deliver the service using exclusively people who live in the city, so that we provide additional work for them. Thank you.
Okay, I'll pick up on a couple of the question about benchmarking. That will come with the year-end report. It's done very much in arrears. We report, I think Rosa will be able to give details on this, but we don't get the figures often enough to produce them with every report I bring, so that will come with the year end, same as it did last year, but we can certainly look at that. And in terms of the social value, I'll take that away and see what we can do.
Okay, so in terms of residual waste and the kilograms collected and comparison to county-wide, that data was provided in the waste strategy work, which was presented previously, in the waste strategies online. So that's got the data at that point in time, but I'm certain that I could provide, I can gather that and provide that as a separate note to the panel after this meeting. But I would say that we perform very well in terms of our Essex partners, in terms of the amount of residual we collect, and performing well means that we collect a low level of residual waste from households and a high level of recycling. So that then leads on to my next point around fly tipping and the question of whether we should consult on the amount of waste collected, and we do stray into the waste strategy on that point. But I've alluded to the current assessment being that we're seeing an increase in black waste being collected next to litter bins, but that's not the only key area of fly tipping. We're seeing a whole variety of different things, but that's more prominent for us at the moment. And as I said, each year the pattern of types of fly tipping varies, and the frequency and the number that we're seeing. So I'd be cautious that nothing has significantly changed in terms of the way that household waste is being collected. So something else has kind of potentially changed that's alluding to that behaviour change, where we're seeing this waste being left by the bins. Hence why we're doing this intervention, to make sure people are aware that it's an issue and that they need to be doing alternative things. If we were to consult on increasing the amount of waste that we're collecting from households, we do stray into that area of the waste strategy, and encouraging lots more black waste rather than recycling. And if we talk about finances, thinking about credit claim, which is diverting material from landfill, which the council benefits and feeds back into delivering those services. So we just have to be cautious and careful about how all of these different pieces of work interrelate into each other, and what outcomes does the council want to achieve. And we want to achieve low levels of residual waste, high levels of recycling, low levels of fly tipping. So we have to think about the impact of one against the other factors.
Councillor Rowe.
Thank you, Chair. I think this has already been sort of, I only have sort of two questions. I'll ask them relatively quickly, but I think it's already been touched on by Councillor Willits. But I will ask my annual question around the KPIs. I know they're benchmarked. I didn't see them benchmarked against anyone in this. I don't think they were they? Were they benchmarked in this document? No, they weren't, no. So I think previously we've requested that they be benchmarked. And I understand that they're benchmarked as a family, but I really believe in the interest of transparency and in the interests of pushing Colchester to be the best it can be, that we should benchmark them across the whole country, and we should say exactly where we are, and we should look at what the best councils are doing. And as I've said before, if that means that we need to lobby somebody else to do something along the lines of Essex or whoever it be, then we should have that information there so that we can look and identify what we need to do to push that forward. And I think in the interests of making Colchester the best it can possibly be, I don't think that's a contentious point. I think that that's something that we should genuinely look to do. And third year running or whatever it is, it seems like it's fallen on deaf ears, but I will continue to ask. And also increase the number of homeless families from 4.7 to 5. Do we have any underlying reason as to why we think that that's happened? Is there anything driving that we need to be aware of?
Leader, welcome back.
Thank you very much. If I could, because I enjoyed the annual joust around, I help Alison in response, but you did say earlier, Alison, didn't you, of course, that we do provide that benchmarking. I think the peer group is something Alison and I had enough to talk about. Tom, we need to get in a little cabal, have a conversation there. And Rosa, go back to the strategy work. Of course, that work looks at the very best authorities and tries to take the best experience. And there's a very fair point to be shared, wouldn't it? The thing I would sort of say, and I get the housing chair, chairman, or chair at the moment, is that it takes time and energy and effort to do that kind of work. But I think it's right. I think we should cross-check ourselves and take account of it. My and our challenge is that our taking pride in where we stand against others, right thing to go and do, sometimes comes at a cost, sometimes comes with competing challenges, as Rosa has said, between what is perhaps best for the bottom line in purse. And the more energy and effort we invest, the more the cost is. There's a tension to this, and I think we just have to acknowledge that. Some services, and last night, for those of you who tuned in to a riveting budget conversation, and the exchanges that went with it, a little rerun and pre-run before we get to full council. There is a conversation there also about the sort of challenge and the cost and the opportunity and where we set ourselves. HRA is a great example. Now, we have a shared concern across the chamber about the viability of housing across the country, and here we've got a responsibility. We are fortunate that we've got, 6,500 homes, a huge, untalked about set of assets, and a measure of influence and control that comes with that, which allows each of us sometimes to help people quite directly by being able to sort of tug on the organisation and our relationships with them and try to get help to our people. We don't talk about that enough, but the standards that are set for us, the costs of them, and how fast we are to respond, is it just in time, or is it a high standard, do everything when we go in to refit, or is it a more measured, if you like, commercial landlords approach about the standards that they expect people to live with? We will be exploring that, I think, through and then as a consequence of the HRA review that's due this spring, and I think it's probably just worth acknowledging that. Last point, Chairman, if I might, was about housing demand. We did some great work across North Essex on this some time ago, but there are clear national trends. Whatever our local understanding, this is about the national economics, frankly, and the pressure on the purse. and the volume of affordable homes, housing, social or otherwise, that's available. You know, we have difficult stances here and across the chamber, and there's a general support trying to help people in these circumstances. On this particular target, to me, we're just having realism about the challenge and the stress, but we're doing some fantastic work, leading work, called in by ministers to talk to it around the university and beyond the box. And I have to say, I don't want to get into any details here, that work's continuing. So I think that we should think about this in a somewhat different way, which is the question could be framed, and it's not easily put into target, what's the quality of temporary accommodation that's provided for people in that terrible position? I've had 2 people in the last couple of days get in touch with me for being made homeless for a variety of reasons. Their circumstances we can only guess, but what the outcome for them is a long period, almost certainly in temporary accommodation. The quality of that, where it is, that's got to be a central part, I think, of our response. Very difficult to put into the stats, but I'll just offer that to you as commentary. Thank you.
Okay. Did I see you, Councillor Rowe?
Just add to David as well, that in terms of looking at the data, I'm looking with Jane at some rolling data so that we get better data month on month and trends that we can see. In terms of the benchmarking, I asked about that in November because I'm aware that's come up before, is that one of the problems that it's not available at mid-year and councils only provide it at year end, and then I'm only reporting to you 4 or 5 months after that, so it's always lapsing, but it will be in the next report, and it is something I'm very keen on because I feel exactly the same, that in terms of our business performance, we need to know month on month how we're performing. We can be proactive then, and also in terms of looking at ourselves against others.
I appreciate that, Councillor Jay. Maybe we could look at the previous year's data versus the previous year's benchmarking. That might be easier because that might give you a bit more time to put it together. It might be a bit more useful then for us to discuss. Sorry, Councillor King. On the point of what was driving the increase from 4 to 5, I don't know if we had any, I didn't quite catch in your answer if there was any analysis that had been completed as to what we thought was driving that, because obviously if we can understand what's driving it, we can look to try to fix it. So do we know what's driving it? Do we need to do some work into it? Do we need to understand how it's working? Is that going on? I think it's important for us to, I take your point about quality, but at the same time, we do need to, you know, I mean, if I ever find myself in a situation where myself and my family are homeless, I would want somewhere, a roof over my head, and I understand that quality would be fantastic, but you know, you just need to have somewhere that you can sort of, you know, shelter and look after your family, right? And I understand that position is incredibly difficult. So what's driving the point to increase from number 4 to number 5?
I mean, Tom, bear with me if I give you the same answer in a different way, see if that helps. I don't think I can. I mean, this is a national and local issue, and there's been a lot of, and I'm sure you've glanced at some, I know you, and I suspect you do, research, and we've done this across North Essex as well, but it is the purse of people relative to their local circumstance. And I mean, I will see if there is anything better than has been published, either from our own research or elsewhere. Let me just stop it at that. If there's more we can provide you and the committee, then I find that interesting myself. I don't know if Lucy's. Did you want to add to that, Lucy?
I mean, I think I would be blunter and say there is a national housing crisis. We're not the only ones. In fact, as David said, there's lots that we're doing that I think other people are learning from to resolve that. That crisis has come about from a shortage of housing, both affordable, but also a sort of perfect storm, I think, that's grown up over the last few years around lack of housing provision, lack of social housing, and also changes to landlords, you know, and landlords pulling out of what they do, increase in obviously migration and immigrants that are needing house. So there's a whole host of national things that are going on that are leading, quite frankly, and we all know, to a housing crisis, which Colchester's not immune to, and that's creating some homelessness. And absolutely, we know the price of rents. I think we were having a conversation the other day that social rents now in some areas are £400 a week. That doesn't feel like a social rent, does it? So, as I said, I think I'd be very blunt and say we have a national crisis on our hand. We're doing our best, but at the moment, it's going to continue to be a major challenge for local authority for some years to come, because it's not something we're going to solve overnight.
No, I understand that, and I appreciate all those points that you've raised. As I said, it's not criticism anyway. I understand that this can't be solved solely by Colchester Council, but I didn't see anywhere where we state what those issues are. And I think if, you know, even if we just state what those issues are, it allows us as voices in the community to be able to lobby whoever we need to lobby to try to fix those issues. And I understand there's a national crisis. I mean, I think there's been a national housing crisis for as long as I can remember. You know, I don't think that's anything new. But I think on the point of it changing from 4 to 5, I think, you know, that I understand that that's just a bit of a change, but that obviously impacts individual families. And for us to truly scrutinise the best way that we can deal with that, we have to understand what the underlying issues are, so that we can, as a council, come up with the right solutions and lobby who we need to lobby in order to fix it.
Leader.
Thank you.
And then I do want to draw a close shortly.
Yeah, I just would briefly say that when it comes to, I know full council is not the best place always for us to be thoughtful, although I know in our own way we all try to do. We have to go back to what are we able to do, and some of the decisions that lie ahead for us, and we do our best work cross-party. We'll lie in looking and testing the HRA viability review and the results, because there's going to be, I think there's going to be some difficult conversations for us to have about, do we on the evidence continue to do all we want to do, or do we do less, and that balance to be struck between investment in obligations to maintain decent homes and the standard and all the rest of it, and how best to do that versus, and I go back to the same point, Chair, because we've got some good points here, the quality of temporary housing that we provide, and we need to keep that balance, I suggest. But I thank you, Tom, for the challenge.
Okay, members, anyone else wish to comment? Well, I think we have to note the KPIs that are before us. I mean, I never like seeing a KPI that says we will not collect 100% of council tax. I just can't get my head around that. But I do accept that there is historic context to the way in which these KPIs are set, and I accept why we're having to adjust a couple here tonight. I'm happy to note that they are going to go forward, unless I see any dissent or any other opinions to the contrary. All those aye. Okay. Thank you very much, Leader, for coming back. Before we do conclude the meeting, I'll look over to the clerk just to remind ourselves that we will be back here, I think, on Thursday, the 27th of February. What will that be a meeting about, Mr. Clerk? And do you want to tell us anything else about the work programme?
Well, I've got nothing to add to the report. Members will be happy to know. I would have a go at explaining what the 3 substantive items are, but 2 of them, if I could explain them, I'd be in a better paid job than I am now. So I'll have to leave those for Michelle Tarbin to explain on the night. We have the 3rd one, which is Community 360, which is a bit of a long-running one, but we're now in a position where we should be able to report back to the committee about the goings-on there. And now we've got the Charity Commission having been through its work into that. We should be able to bring that to the committee.
Okay, noted. Thank you very much, everyone. Safe journey home.